6 o'clock.
Right. We start at 6:15, and we should have good discussion tonight. And if there's more discussion needed, we'll do it, but I expect to have much of the discussion done tonight. With that, I would like to invite Lynn Savage, Acting Town Manager, to discuss Articles 1, 2, 3, and 4 relative to the zoning bylaws and the approval to borrow debt.
Okay, so the Articles 1, 2, and 3 are all zoning articles. The first article, number 1, is to change the zoning bylaw to allow for changes in the height of the building and the floor, the actual sizing of the building itself. It's, right now, the proposal is for the building to be at least 105 feet.
Right.
Which is a little bit, quite a bit higher than the buildings that are there. But if anyone has attended any of the public sessions on this, they did show some demonstrations that you won't see the buildings if you're standing in front of 1600 Osgood across the street, but if you're coming down the street, you'd be able to see them because the elevation is quite different from the front of the building to the very back of the building. Zoning 2 is specific to additional zoning changes for the renewable energy and the solar panels. So all of the buildings right now, most of them have solar panels on them. The zoning needs to be changed in order to take them off the buildings and put them over where the ball fields are, which is okay. They were originally zoned to be put on top of the buildings, and any new buildings were supposed to have the solar put on them. They're not restricting that on the new building. They might come back to future time to put solar on the new building, but it wouldn't bring it any higher, much higher than what it is. That's why they're going the 105. And the third zoning as well is for the modifications for the setbacks of the solar panels. I'm not really up to speed on a lot of the zoning as far as the details and knowing the requirements, but had I known, I would have had somebody from the planning board come, but they have a meeting tonight as well.
No problem. Let me just say for the, go ahead, Lynn.
I just had a question. Who pays to move the solar panels? Is that?
That will be the contractors and the developer, yes.
The new developer?
Yep.
Okay, so are they taking down some of the existing structure? I have not been able to go to any of the meetings about this, so.
So the intent is that the front two buildings, which is building A and C, I believe. I don't know why they're called A, B, and C, but the front two buildings will remain under the custody of 1600 Osgood, the
Okay.
present owners.
Yeah.
They are selling anything from behind the two front buildings back. All of those buildings will be torn down.
Oh, okay.
And there is
I guess I didn't
intent to
realize
only be one building that will
One
house,
massive- yeah, one big
will
building.
house the state-of-the-art robotic distribution and
Warehouse
packaging
facility.
center.
Okay.
Yep.
that. Okay, so anything on, the solar panels are now currently on those buildings behind.
Behind.
They're going to be removed, put on the
Yep.
ground mount.
Yes, and the
And then-
understanding is that there will be very little downtime, because my
the solar
question
plant.
was, we
Yeah.
receive revenue as well
Right.
as the net metering credits, which reduce our energy costs.
Right.
I want to make sure that they're doing it at an optimal time, that we're not going to lose any of that benefit.
Okay.
And they will strategically plan it and take them down and move them accordingly, so there's very little downtown,
Okay.
and we won't lose any revenue.
To add a little bit more to the solar panels, I don't, it was last year, I think, there was a new bylaw for the solar panels. The planning board worked a really long time
Yeah.
on putting, and it's a very long and lengthy to try to cover every circumstances, you know, why is it that way? And so this is, again, which you would expect with a brand-new bylaw. This is a unique situation. But it's like, is it in keeping with what the whole philosophy of the bylaw was, which is to encourage solar
Right,
panels?
sure.
Yes.
So that's why it's like, yeah, it's
Yep.
worth tweaking, in my opinion, because you want to keep the field.
You want to keep the
You wanna-
panels, you just have to put them in a different.
Correct.
that's right.
And they'll be on the ground, they'll be mounted on the ground versus on the buildings.
Yeah.
And then they will be doing landscaping and everything to buffer it so that you won't physically see it from the road. It will,
Is there a difference with maintenance on solar panels on the ground versus on a building? Do they do better up on a building than they do on the ground? And this may be a little bit off point. but
Yeah,
it
I don't
just-
know.
necessarily.
I don't have
Smell
any,
and the- You know, just,
May I
Yeah.
make a suggestion, bring that
Yeah.
back up, and Thomas is here?
yeah,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
Oh, right,
Thomas
geez.
is more involved with the solar, right?
Absolutely. He
Yes.
is.
okay, great,
Um,
thank you.
I don't know if I attended the Sunday meeting, which was pretty full at the VFW Hall, and one thing you mentioned about the solar panels going on the softball fields, there are, what, 3-4 softball fields there?
Yep.
4?
I don't
I'm not sure what they're going to do to replace them. I
The
don't think that was
fields?
ever
The
resolved.
fields?
The
Well-
big softball fields.
Well, we have to understand that we knew that the softball fields were a temporary thing anyway, that they allowed us to use them, they built them, they allowed the town to use them, we don't own them, we don't maintain them, that was gonna go away sometime, at some point, no matter what they did over there. Because as you remember, originally it was zoned to build 500 housing units there. So I think there'll be some discussion, because Amazon has stated in a public session with the Board of Selectmen that they are willing to help the town with other funding sources that they have to help do other fields somewhere else, or other, things that the town might need within the school, or anything else. We just haven't decided how we want to use that, and how to go about it, and put a plan in place to best utilize what they're willing to help us with and donate to the town. Because they do want to work with the town, they want to be a partner with the town, and
That was the major emphasis of the conversation, was Amazon being a good neighbor, helping out
Yep.
with the schools, with the sports
Yep.
throughout the town.
Yeah.
So I'll just mention a few things that did come up. On a conservative side, the base property value would be $175 million, worth between $3.5 and $4.5 million in additional tax revenue. The building permit by itself is $5.4 million. So there is going to be a significant influx of revenue if this
Correct.
gets passed. For technical purposes, technical? I don't think it's technical. It's Hillwood Development is the landowner, not Amazon. Amazon leases from Hillwood. The lease will be approximately 20 years long, which is a lengthy lease. And the question was asked, well, what happens after 20 years? Dave, you know me a little while. I'm not going to be around 20 years, okay? I may be 6 feet under, okay?
Well-
You can mark it on that, I hope not, but it's just something I'm not going to worry about. And 20 years is a long, long time.
Right.
There
So
were
they're going to own the
concerns.
facility as well, or the
Hillwood is-
ground?
The Hillwood will own the ground, they're gonna buy the land.
Yep.
And build a facility.
Okay. so they
Amazon
own-
specs.
Yeah, it's a
Right.
ground lease, it's typical throughout the country. Hillwood
Yeah.
does it for several large
Yeah.
clients.
Interesting.
That focus
And then
on
they just lease
They
it.
do, right.
Yeah.
For
That's what they do.
other fun facts that came out of this, and I'll wait on the sewer until we get to the Article 4. They anticipate approximately 200 trucks a day, which seems like a lot, and it is a lot. But the concern was that the trucks would go into town to 114, come down my neck of the woods, blah, blah, blah. The goal will be left turn only out of that facility. They have had this experience before with other facilities in the country where they've actually had cameras on board. They will stop truck drivers from turning right no matter what, and they'll be going through Ward Hill and the 495 connector.
Right.
So,
Which is specifically what that was, Ward Hill was built with the intent for Lucent when it was there.
and
So you
on
said
that.
the goal is to turn left? Is that
No,
the
they will-
No,
requirement?
that's
No.
gonna be the requirement. That's gonna
That'll be
the-
one of the
You said goal,
requirements.
so
I said,
ju-
yeah, it's the
yeah.
requirement.
The requirement,
Now,
okay.
can they stop that one truck from turning right? Not the first time, but he may never turn right again.
We can regulate it with the police.
I was
and-
going to say, that's a great
Yeah,
image.
really.
I know,
I just think
turn right
that,
again.
look, you got a contract, you're gonna turn left. You don't turn left, you don't have a
Right.
contract, so.
You said truck, these are 18-wheelers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
yes.
That's the other thing, too. This is not a distribution center in the sense of, what's the last mile it's
Last
called?
mile, it's not a
Yeah.
last mile.
Just in
It
time.
it is,
Yeah.
they're gonna take the trucks and bring it out to the last mile distribution facilities. So this is just a major warehouse.
It's a hub,
The
yeah.
top 2 of the 3 floors will be 90% robotics.
Yes.
It will have 1,500 full-time equivalent employees. Right now, 2 shifts planned. They will continue to do all their studies on that kind of traffic, but remember back in the old days, before my time, Lucent had 13,000 employees.
New England Telephone.
I'm sorry?
New England Telephone had more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other angle here is that It will increase come busy season, holiday period, when people want to ship all their goodies through Amazon, so.
Right.
um,
And the other good thing is you gotta realize we are taking a facility that has been underutilized for too many years now, and cleaning it up and bringing in a new business with 1,500 jobs, tax revenue, and other amenities that could follow.
There's,
Any word on how many professional level jobs versus?
They didn't
warehouse
specify,
type
they
jobs?
just said a
Just
total of
curious.
1,500 jobs, ranging from anywhere from, $15 an hour up to high-level management
Right.
positions. They didn't really specify.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Liz, would you like to ask a question regarding solar panels?
Yes, the solar panel question you had.
Oh, do solar panels generally do better mounted on a building or on the ground in terms of maintenance? Is there any difference? Okay. No, okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
Good.
Any discussions on the Articles 1, 2, 3?
I just have one quick question. The tractor trailer school that was there,
Mhm.
was that, is that still functioning? Will it still be
That'll be
there?
gone.
That'll be gone.
So how many trucks went in and out because of the school?
There was a comment that said that maybe even less trucks than would go in and out of the truck. I don't know.
they
Yeah,
could
no,
turn right,
I'm not sure of the amount of trucks that came in and out from the driving school. but,
Right. So I
um,
mean, so that has been going on for a long time, trucks
Yes.
coming in and out of there.
Right.
Big 18-wheelers.
And I think one of the comments
With
was, at least the
semi
people that are
inexperienced.
driving the trucks for Amazon will
Yeah.
not drive.
Exactly. Okay.
What about the airport? Is that any concern with the building height?
Excuse me?
With the airport, is there any concern with the building height?
No. No.
There's other structures,
The stacks.
the
right?
stack that is actually taller
Taller.
than what they're proposing for a zoning change.
Yeah.
Yep, Yep.
So, I'm sure there'll probably be little flashing lights and stuff like that.
they
but
will, yeah.
It won't be like Dunkin' Donuts having to wait forever to put up an electric pole because they didn't get the FAA approval to
I was
put a
thinking
telephone
when they-
pole.
Is that what kept that Dunkin' Donuts from
With
opening?
the trash
I just
processing
wondered.
plant, they're worried about the birds that the trash processing plant will attract.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, that would make
I hadn't
sense.
thought of that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to Article 4, which is the borrowing for the sewer line on Osgood Street. So the proposal is, as you can see, the article is here to vote for the town to borrow $7 million. I just want to reassure everybody that the project is going to cost $7 million. And because it's going to be a town project, we have to get approval for the full value of it. I'm not borrowing $7 million. We have an agreement, which I received a letter, I wasn't able to make copies, and I apologize. I will scan it in and forward it to you guys so that you can have it tomorrow. A letter from Hillwood dated May 31st that was given to the Board of Selectmen, committing to their one-third share for the sewer line. So this will be split one-third Hillwood, one-third the town, and then the town will be applying for a Mass Works grant. So overall, we won't be doing any borrowing or any work until all three pieces come to fruition. Okay, meaning, excuse me, the Mass Works grant, if the application is accepted, then we'll proceed with the sewer line. If it doesn't, we won't. So, yeah, please. I don't think you can get any water in there. Oh, okay.
There's little bottles there?
So I know the concern was, a lot of questions were, why would the town be borrowing $7 million? We are not in any way, shape, or form. And what we're going to do is apply with the Mass Works grant for as much as possible. So our one-third portion could be even less. It would be paid through the enterprise funds, which is self-sufficient, and knowing that this is probably going to happen maybe a year to 2 years time period, chances are that we're going to be able to pay for it, thank you, with retained earnings, and not even have to do borrowing because of the strong retained earnings that the enterprise funds have. So our most exposure is anywhere about $2.3 million.
And has Hillwood pledged to provide the $2.3 million even if the MassWorks grant isn't approved? So is that something that we have?
Their letter commits to reevaluate, looking at it if the MassWorks grant doesn't come through. And we'll determine it at that time if there's another feasible option to go. We'll sit down at the table and talk about it again. But along with the sewer line, we'll also be pulling in sidewalks from 1600 Osgood, hopefully both sides of the street, to connect up to the Princeton properties where it ends. So we'll have the connectivity, the sewer line will be put in, as well as allowing any of the other available lots for any type of construction or bringing in other businesses. Anybody can connect. There will be connection fees, but there is no plan for any type of betterments whatsoever associated with the sewer line.
So that the bottom line is that Route 125 corridor development, which is,
We'll pick up.
has never passed town meeting or other relative to putting that sewer line in, we have a very fiscally responsible opportunity
Right.
to do that and allow that stretch of land to grow and mature. We can't right now because of the lack of sewer.
Right.
So it's,
So the enterprise funds, oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Procedurally, just so as soon as it's all happening, so we
Yep.
approved an investment budget in the last, in the last town meeting. So would that be added on?
The what?
So the 2 million extra now to, to get that 125 to sewer line, and
Yep.
then that's on top of what we already approved in the investment budget.
Yes, yes.
So it's probably going to increase.
So, but that, right. So anything that we've already approved for any type of road work or capital or sewer line or anything is in the different areas.
But it will increase if we went through the debt, it will increase our ratio
Right.
above 5 probably.
Yeah, I'm
But
just
that's-
wondering
Yeah.
procedurally, where would we see it? I mean, right now we have a 2020,
Yep.
21, 22, approved.
So this is outside of that, and this is paid through the enterprise funds. It's not within the operating budget
Okay.
or the operating capital. You know the capital
Yeah,
plan?
yeah.
It would be in the enterprise funds, which we've been funding with retained earnings, and it doesn't affect our debt ratio,
Okay, yeah.
Okay,
okay?
thank you for
Even the
clearing that.
borrowing would happen if we had to borrow?
If we had to borrow, it would be with the enterprise fund, so it's not going to
Okay.
affect that 5% ratio that we do on the operating budget, which is the
Okay,
general
so
fund.
it would be, and by the enterprise funds, you mean both the sewer and the water?
Yes.
So all the problems they've been having with the sewage in the Merrimack, are we gonna be getting, I
That's
mean,
the
I know you.
GLSD.
What?
That's the GLSD.
Is that separate from our enterprise funds?
That is an assessment that we have on our sewer fund.
Okay.
Yep,
So it's an assessment that goes on the enterprise fund?
yes.
And
it's
that
paid through
could
there.
potentially go up?
It
to
could,
deal
in
with that
increments,
issue.
right, and it would be our percentage share of it,
Okay.
based on, and
Yeah,
it'll be
but-
spread out over a period of time.
Right, my concern is just that the enterprise fund is, it's not a limitless fund, so if it's
No.
got this pulling on it, plus anything that might come as a result of that Merrimack pollution issue, it's not a limitless fund, so we have
Right,
to.
I mean, I'm not saying, I
They
mean,
would
we
get a
could
sewer
borrow.
bill, right? They would get a pretty big sewer bill with 1,500 employees. I would be.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, oh, that's
That's a
true.
good point.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
true,
Yeah.
that's true.
Couldn't you, is there any way to allocate part of the additional revenue from this project back into extending the sewer line? I know you're saying it'd be structured as part of the enterprise funds, but for example, it's a pretty significant building permit fee, right?
Yep.
So could you take $2.3 million and allocate it towards a special project in any
No,
way?
because you can't take money from the operating budget, or general fund,
And put it in
taxpayers'
enterprise.
revenue, or local receipts and move it to an enterprise fund. We can't.
We wouldn't,
So, I mean,
I
maybe
mean,
you mentioned.
unless
so-
there was some kind of, well, I won't even go through
Right.
that,
It-
but that, because there'd be a concession and then some kind of
Right, I mean.
direct funding, but,
We gotta look at the fact that, the enterprise funds over the past 3 years, maybe almost 4, we've been paying for a lot of our capital through retained earnings.
Yeah.
Which has reduced our debt service for the sewer and the water enterprise funds.
so even if
So
we had
even
to
if we were
borrow,
gonna
it's not.
borrow $2.3 million, which is probably spread out over a 20-year period, the debt payment from it is not gonna
Not
impact the
impactful.
enterprise funds drastically.
Understood.
Because we've already reduced that debt.
When do they start paying the $3+ million a year in taxes? Is that after it's completely built and they've hired people?
Occupancy, yeah.
So you said, what is it, brings in like $750,000
And I think they want,
today?
yeah, I mean, I understand that they want to be up and running by 2021.
Yeah.
That's their intent. If everything passes and then they get through their planning and zoning, all the zoning and any other town board, their intent is, they want to move fast. And Hillwood says that they move fast once everything's been approved and permitted, and they have, because they have the resources. You understand, they're a very big entity. This is what they do for a living.
So, oh.
Just what, maybe you had it, you mentioned it, why do we have to extend the sewer line? Is that a requirement? I mean, we lived now for so many years without, and.
Without it, because there is no sewer down in that, and it will attract additional.
It's very
Businesses.
impactful for
It is.
businesses. So, for
Yes.
example, if you wanted to develop, where the old, like where Hokkaido is, like it's very difficult to run a restaurant without a sewer line.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure there's people that could speak more to that, but
Is the sewer line not up that far to?
no.
I thought it
Oh, I
was
have no
up there.
idea.
No, it only.
No.
goes-
Well,
Must have stopped
Where does it
somewhere.
stop? I think it
No,
stops
at
there.
Princeton Properties, because Princeton Property is hooked up to the sewer.
Oh, I didn't know.
It's just that because there's a pumping station at Butcher Boy.
Okay. Yeah,
So
I'm
it's
gonna
right,
say
So
that.
they
right, so it's
could-
right up to
yeah.
there. So what, the intent, from what I understand, hopefully I'm not speaking incorrectly, the sewer line does go from Princeton Property all the way up to China, beyond China Blossom, up that way. What they'll be running is they're gonna be running it from 1600 Osgood all the way up to China Blossom. Because of the infrastructure that is there, it's cheaper for us in the evaluation that we got from the engineers to run it all the way up to China Blossom. Because there's that pumping station, we're hoping to work a MassWorks grant so that we get some of the funding now while they're doing the Princeton property construction, and before they do the road and final hot top, is do the dry line. So meaning running the dry line now, they'll hot top, and then once we get everything else passed, if this passes, only if this passes, when they finally start the construction for the sewer line from 1600 Osgood up, they don't have to tear up the road again, because Mass DOT does not like that.
no.
Right.
Once
nobody
they hot
likes
top,
that.
they don't want it torn up again, so this will preempt that. We'll get that done, dry line, then we just hook up.
What is Princeton Properties? Which property is that? I-
For Jetta.
For Jetta.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So
That
for
big
how many,
construction on
Yeah.
125,
how many years has the town been trying to get a sewer line down there?
a lot.
A long
Long
time.
time.
I mean,
I've
this
been
has
here a long time,
this- Yes, I know.
And I-
We both have, and it's just like, it's a
Mhm.
continuous, like, how do we do this? And it has,
Right.
this is the biggest light that you can shine on it so far. It's,
I mean, there are
It might
some
actually
businesses
happen.
that are there that don't, I mean, down that far, they do not have
Yeah.
sewer.
Hmm.
And there's some, there's some available land, there's there's some industrial buildings there across from 1600.
Jimmy's must not have sewer.
I don't think so.
Huh.
Unless they hooked up to Haverhill somehow, but I don't think so. There's no pumping stations down
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
So there will be a pumping station down that end, somewhere on the 1600 Osgood's property, most likely, because that's what the plan designed. Because it would need a pumping station.
Right.
Yep, and the sidewalks will hopefully, they're still discussing how far beyond 1600 Osgood, but most likely it will go on across the street to where that little business there that does the kettle pizza.
yeah.
Yeah.
There'll be the sidewalks, and it's all gonna determine on what Mass DOT is requiring, whether they require sidewalks on both sides or that the road isn't wide enough. So there's still a lot of work that we have to go through, but the intent is to, hopefully if everything passes, to,
Wasn't there difficulty with Butcher Boy previously? With sidewalks on there?
yeah, they didn't want it in front of, there is not gonna be any sidewalks in front of Butcher Boy.
Because they won't.
They don't want it.
This never came up with the marijuana facility. How come, or did it? Did I miss that?
I think because that's a completely different type of facility where they wouldn't be using a sewer. Because any
Be
water that they
recycled.
used inside would be recycled.
water, yeah.
Right. Yep.
So we have the Articles 1, 2, and 3, which are zoning changes for height and solar panels.
Yep.
And
And
Article
the
4,
type of
which-
business, yeah.
Which, I want you to put some thoughts to it, I want to put some words down, because the town moderator will probably ask, does the finance committee have any opinion on this? And I'll just basically say, hey, anything that increases the property base of the town, increases the revenues to the town, because we're sorely in need. But where else are we gonna get the revenue from, other than Prop 2.5? Ooh, third rail.
So aesthetically, it would look better, obviously, to have the panels on the roof and not on the grass, but I'm guessing if they have to dismantle them and get them hooked up again on the grass, they're not gonna wanna do it again. That's probably not, it's probably just driving, because I was so,
I'll gotta tell you, Ed, I actually see an opportunity to increase the size of the solar farm by putting them on the roof afterwards, so you're both on the
Afterwards,
ground
yeah.
and
Right.
buildings.
true,
Yep.
true.
I think it's beautiful.
Where you-
I don't see a
Thomas,
problem
do you
why.
need to make a disclosure?
Maybe, for sure.
All right, I disclose I work for a solar company,
There you go.
No way.
but I'm not involved in that project at all.
Very
Oh,
good.
okay.
Appreciate your expertise on this thing.
Yeah.
We will be, you didn't hear this earlier, Thomas, we're going to be voting at before the special town meeting on all of the articles we're going to vote on. And then the case of Articles 1, 2, and 3, it's just, you okay my words, if asked by town moderator, make a statement. And then Article 4, which is the borrowing, we do need to make an approval, either approve or not.
But we're not voting on it tonight. You have to wait to vote before
Right.
special town meeting, because we
That's
need that
why,
one.
that's why
Okay.
I know your situation,
Yeah,
I
I won't
know
be here.
Divya's and probably Chuck's, so what you see here, the core is important. So if I have to entice you with Chinese food, it'll be there.
So be it.
I think Chuck said, I mean, Thomas said it best. He said, I like Chinese food without the tariffs. So we'll hold the MSG and the tariffs. Lynn, thank you very much.
Thanks, Len.
Um,
Do we want to ask generally what the feeling is about this? Is everyone, or no?
What?
About Article 4? We're not voting officially, but. no.
Are there any discussions on Article 4, by the way?
Anything that you want to understand
Personally,
further
if I were
before?
voting tonight, I would vote favorable
Yeah,
action.
so would I.
Is
I
that-
think-
Of any of the ones, you know.
So if the state doesn't come up with the money, but the developer comes up with a third, do we have the option to come up with, I mean, it's,
Anything can go, but the, you know,
Right.
it would be, Lynn, could you stress that? Would you guys ever change your mind to pay 2/3? Because I thought it said wording wise, we pay no more than 1/3.
Yeah, we would pay no more than 1/3. We would probably rescind this and come back to the table with
Yeah.
with a different negotiation, because, yeah, in all actuality, I mean, it wouldn't be feasible for us to pay more than 1/3.
So,
And that's been the discussion all along.
so Ed, the actual article prevents us from going forward with
Right.
more than
Right. A
a
one-third.
third. It said, that the appropriation of the article should be contingent upon the receipt of gifts, grants, or other contributions received by the town for the sewer project of not less than 2/3.
Right.
so if we borrow money for this, which we will, do we take 5 years or 10 years to pay it off, or do we, once the
20.
revenue, the tax stream comes in, of course, do
Well,
we have
what-
the ability to rapidly pay it off, or?
No.
You don't?
No,
That's okay.
so, yeah, and we're allowed to borrow up to 20 years on something like this if we choose. But, because 20 years is less than the life of the sewer line.
Right.
I will determine that, or myself and our financial advisor that we hire, to determine if this does come to fruition and we do any borrowing for it, what's the best option.
Right.
Yep, yep, and being a triple bond, AAA bond rated community, we get favorable rates, so it's been very good
Borrowing is good, a good
Yes.
thing.
right now. Yep, we just went through one, so.
So are there any other possible cost increases where, going through that whole permitting process, I think it's probably a big undertaking for the town?
For the sewer line?
No, in general, for the whole project.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
So are there any risks to our operational budget where we say, okay, now,
For us?
yeah,
on this project,
yeah,
no.
nothing,
No.
okay.
No, I don't feel there is.
Do you have to do an RFP for the contractor to do the sewer line, or do you already?
Yes,
you do?
we would do an RFP, yeah.
So, but there could be a surprise, it could be cheaper, it could be more, right?
Right, but we could also get more money on the MassWorks grant too.
Okay.
So, yeah.
What's the timeline to get grants from,
The MassWorks grant application is due to the state in August. So that is the goal. And they do out-of-round applications as well, but our goal is, after town meeting, if this passes, we're gonna move on this really fast so that we can get the application in. We hope to schedule a meeting with Mass DOT after town meeting if this passes, to sit down with them and find out in more detail what they're gonna require to run the sewer line, and what they require on the street, whether it's sidewalks, whether it's a bike lane, I mean, they do have specifics, how many street signals, things like that. You know. Yes. So there's still a lot to go through, but this is the first step.
What if they say that there's a requirement to widen the street? Who
Well,
would then pay for that?
it would be part of the whole project.
Right.
And then we would look at whomever to decide whether it's feasible, do we want to move it forward with the sewer line or not? I mean, if the cost is $10 million, I mean, the chances are that nobody's going to want to do it at this point, unless Hillwood or Amazon is going to foot most of the bill, because the town isn't going to, in my
Right, right,
opinion.
right.
But again, I'm only interim town manager, and when the new town manager comes on board, but if my goal is to steer us in this direction, keep it within the $7 million, and get as much as we can through the Mass Works grant, because they are excited about this project as well, from what I understand. The state is.
Great.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you. With that, we're going to move on to the Article 6. And I'll read
Article 6 or 5?
5, we're going to pass on.
Okay.
I mean, we can talk about it, but
Okay, no, that's fine, I just.
as I
thought you
understand it,
misspoke.
right now, there is not a conservation on this, any of the land. And as it was originally set up, it was going
There
to
is
be
not a
residential development.
conservation?
There is none, so this will actually protect,
Really?
That is correct.
Yep.
137 acres it will protect.
and right now, it's 153 acres will be protected.
Yes.
And I absolutely is a very favorable thing from that sense, keeping the,
Yeah.
Actually, Tim, it's 137.
I had no idea.
137 we put in conservation.
oh, that's true, it's 153 in total, right? That's right.
137.
So, right now, the Board of Selectmen have the authority to make residential lots up there if they want.
Yep.
And obviously, they're not going to do that. Article 6, as it reads, and I welcome Dave and Ellen, Dave Brown and Ellen Mosier to the table. Dave, you just want to be in the audience, or?
No.
Okay. And I'm going to read the article as it currently stands, and as I know, and I'll also say what will change. Article 6, sale or lease of a portion of the Stevens Estate known as the Event Center and Function Facility, to see if the town will vote to transfer the care, custody, management, control of a portion of the land and building known as the Stevens Estate from the board. This is strange, but it says from the Board of Selectmen for the purposes for which such land is currently held, to the Board of Selectmen for the purpose of sale or lease of said land and building subject to the existing historical preservation restriction and an easement for public parking and public access. And again, the Board of Selectmen sell or lease said land or portion. Again, I'm just paraphrasing many of the things here. You can read the whole thing yourself. And that's not the right thing. That's my daughter.
Yeah.
Upon terms and conditions as the Board of Selectmen may deem appropriate and necessary, and the Board of Selectmen determine whether all or a portion of the above described property shall be sold or leased, and the boundaries of the property be sold or leased, and to enter into all agreements and execute any and all instruments as may be necessary on behalf of the town of North Andover to effect said conveyance. That is how the current article is read, and I know that the Board of Selectmen have voted to say that they were not going to sell the property, they will lease it. So this article is supposed to be amended on the floor at the special town meeting to say, to lease, period. So just some clarifications there. With that,
Was that an accommodation, or what was the thought of leasing it
Well,
rather than selling it?
as we'll go into it, I mean, a lot of people are seeing as it is, as an asset of the company, as of the town, and it's a historical asset. So to turn it over to somebody else, even though it has historical preservations, would just continue, just seem to put them in the wrong way. It makes them feel different about it, whereas a lease, I'm not sure how much different they feel about it, but a lease says, at least it's still our property, and we get rental revenue out of it.
I think it was in response to the couple of meetings that they had. I mean, I watched those meetings, and it was a general consensus, like, they all felt the same way. I mean, because the Board of Selectmen, as far as I've watched, and they have said this, that they are very much interested in preserving the building, much like everyone else. That the goals are similar, preserve the building, and they thought that was probably the best way to do it, is to retain ownership and just do a lease. So what they did, it was just a formal vote. I mean, they couldn't amend the warrant in
No.
that meeting.
It's too late.
It's too late. They could only do that at town meeting. So they just did like a formal, you know,
We vote that we will amend
we
this.
vote,
Yes,
we
that
vote
our
that we
intention
agree,
is
our
to-
intention is to amend this to just say lease instead of sale.
It's like an Osgood lease for 20 years, or is it 2 years and then you could?
I wouldn't be surprised,
The market
because,
rate.
and then maybe Ellen and Dave know better, but the proposal that they do have before them is they're gonna be putting, the Elegant Banquets is plans on putting several $1 million into the property and if they're gonna lease it, you know they're gonna recover their money.
Yeah.
So it's probably a long-term lease, like 20 years. I wouldn't be surprised.
yeah.
The terms
Yeah.
have not been negotiated. It's just, it's one of the options that was proposed. So.
Yeah, can I comment on that?
Sure.
Yeah, so I was at the, I think it was the most recent selectmen's meeting where this came up and where they passed that resolution to do that. It was after discussion, after many folks had come forward and spoken about the historical value of it and the concern about what would happen if the project doesn't go the way, the way that Elegant Banquets plans it. What happens if it fails, basically.
Right.
And everyone felt more comfortable if it fails, that we still had,
Yes.
basically take it
Still have
back.
time.
There was recourse.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And Elegant Banquets, by the way, were like, yeah, this is fine with us. They didn't have any issues with
Depends
that.
what meeting. The other side of that is the covenants isn't in place as the commission, the state commission, or the historical commission. There's certain
Covenants?
covenances that need to be strapped, they need to be embraced, because not all of them is understood by Elegant Banquets. They didn't understand some of that terminology. The other question with that is who has the first right of refusal if in fact they build this project, which is mostly new, and it's not restoration, he said repair, so for the original building. So there's a lot more questions than answers, and he did not have those answers.
But you're saying the reason that they decided to go to the lease is because they didn't have these answers. Is that what you're saying?
Not really. At least to me makes no difference, because there's still questions as to process and as to what's the betterment for the town of North Andover. And I've been to several of the meetings, and Dave's been, and several of us have spoken. Having this Elegant Banquets making this type of proposal is almost a distraction as to the process that has been presented to the town residents. There's some value in keeping it just the way it is. Many estates in this area, as well as castles, as well as, we're New England. New England likes what is presented, and I did send pictures from a wedding I did this past weekend. There's a lot more information I can give on that. They spent well over $100,000 in producing this wedding. And guests were coming in from all over the country. And it was a 300-person wedding with no limo buses and this, that, the other. One parking lot was absolutely fine. There was no parking problem. So I look at the proposal, and I don't think it's North Andover, I don't think it's for our community, but that's in a whole other discussion, I'm sure. But we're here tonight as a board to review what you're reading on the screens, that the estate has been profitable over the last 6-7 years, and I'm just gonna add live a little bit. There is no subsidization from the town. We pay for exactly what services, just like any other town buildings, pay for their own plowing, their electric, their this, that, the other. We also put our funds into the general fund, as well as the capital improvement fund. So there is a lot that the Stevens Estate does take care of. We have not been nonprofit, we have been profitable. And since the Board of Selectmen, we believe, and they have said to us, they panicked, and that's why the moratorium went on. not everybody agreed, but they cut out 26 tours of weddings that were ready to start booking. And we could not book weddings, nor accept additional deposits. So going through here, it says we are generating approximately 647,000 in profits. There is more than, I believe, well, it says further down, there's 412 in retained earnings. Just this weekend alone, I had to deal with disclosing to the client on her menu, as well as what her bar at the end of the night to settle. The bar took in well more than at least $8,000 that I know of. The food cost was about $26,000. There was additional foods and there was additional services brought in, which they paid for this wedding. This wedding was first class. This wedding was stunning. There were people taking tours, asking historical questions about the estate. Not a flaw was brought up, not a bit of discomfort that maybe the paint was a little chipped or the railing needed a little tightening. This was pure New England, pure Stevens Estate, and its purest and finest of North Andover.
Well, I
So
don't
going
understand.
down
What's
here-
the 8,000, 26,000 issue?
I'm
You
just
said you
saying
had
it's
to
not in the
disclose
books right
something
now.
to her?
It's not in our books right now,
Oh,
It's not being
okay.
reflected
It's
in
not being
this.
reflected.
as well
Okay.
as any other events that have taken place since the moratorium. Well, the moratorium was in place, but there's been other events that still need to be put into the books
Mhm.
through June 30th.
Okay.
As well as deposits, we did get back, I believe, one, if not two weddings that canceled the minute the moratorium went on for next July. One has definitely signed back in, another one is considering, and calls are being made to some of my clients as well. I'm disclosing, as you did, Tom. I'm an event planner, I refer up there, that's all I do. My clients deal directly with the Stevens Estate. I just mentioned that, as well as the Andover Townhouse, the North Andover Country Club, Tewksbury Country. They have a choice of where they want their event. I just refer.
So could you just be more specific? So when you say moratorium, can you just, for the record, explain exactly what you're referring
Moratorium was
to?
placed by the Board of Selectmen in April, I believe, I don't know the exact date, that we could no longer book until further notice any new events, and we had to return any deposits being brought to the estate for events through this year, through the 31st of December.
That's the first I've heard of that.
So what is the reference to next July? You made a reference to
There were
next July.
weddings that were booked for next July.
Okay, and
they
those are the
withdrawn.
ones that, okay. But, okay, and that was by their choice, or the Board of Selectmen said we had to return the deposits and they
We
were?
had to return the deposits, is what I'm understanding, and there weren't to be any other events booked through December 31st.
None after.
After
December
December 31st.
So let's,
31st.
Okay.
why don't we, can we, Tim, if I may, Lynn, do you want to just quickly opine on that from a procedural perspective, exactly what the Board of Selectmen would be authorized to kind of do?
On
And
moratorium?
yes, please, just specifically. Thank you very much.
Sit here.
Okay. So the recommendation was made to the Board of Selectmen because of the financial situation of the estate as well as the projections for FY '20 based on a current bookings report that was given to us in April.
Okay.
That there was going to be a sizable deficit for FY '19 and a sizable deficit for the first 6 months of FY '20 because there were no bookings received. There were no bookings before the Board of Selectmen placed the moratorium or the hold on taking any future bookings. We had,
Bookings for when?
because there was 15 bookings on the current bookings report that was given to me by the director of the Stevens Estate, which totaled in less than the previous year, which was 58, from July 1st of 2019 to December 31st of 2019, okay, which is the first 2 quarters of fiscal FY '20. The recommendation was to put the moratorium on taking any bookings beyond December 31st until after the RFP was received and to see if we got any good responses to the RFP. Once we received the RFP and we decided that we were pulling the two articles off of the town meeting, we lifted the moratorium and told them that they could continue to take bookings till September of 2020. And we did not return any deposits to anybody. I was not aware of any deposits that the estate was holding that got returned. That was not the instructions of the Board of Selectmen.
And when was it lifted? Do you, approximately, just curious?
The
like-
next meeting after the
So
town.
2 weeks
meeting.
later?
Right.
Oh.
The
okay.
next
So
meeting-
So it was like a month and a half between the two?
It was about a month, probably.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's our prime selling season, after 26 or so tours took place after Valentine's Day through the end of March, beginning of April. So those people were all on, quote, hold, because we weren't allowed to go to the next step.
Have you since then brought them back?
Some are still wary because September 2020 is in the middle of wedding season, and we still have a contract of a tent that goes to the end of October. That's part of the contract with Peak, and it's in the middle of the wedding season. Bookings are trend-based, and bookings don't happen like food orders. I mean, it is a total different ballgame. Things book as people get engaged. It could be the December engagements, it could be the February engagements, it could be Memorial Day engagements. People are booking all year round. Having the tent allows a larger party, which the other night was close to 300 people. The bookings for the winter are filtered in on smaller events, and the whole first floor is used. The function room, which BU put on, is disguised at night with lighting, so it's just fine. But it can hold 120 with a dance floor. And I have seated many people in the parlors for adults to eat in there, and then use the larger room for some seating, high tops, and the dance floor. So there are bookings in the winter time, but when you have staff and you're marketing and you're just in the midst of giving all those tours, it was frozen. And I'm not sure what checks were returned, but checks weren't accepted, is from what I understand.
Can I interject here? I just want to make sure that they get all of what's on
Go
here.
ahead,
'cause this,
you can take the next step.
Okay, because Kevin, the chairman
Yep.
of our board, and we're an advisory board.
Kevin
Kevin
Leslie?
Willow?
Willow.
Willow?
Yeah, this is his presentation that he put together and ran
He's out of
past.
the country.
He's out of the country.
Oh, I got, what is his title?
He's
He's
the
the
chairman of
chairman.
we serve on the Stevens Estate Advisory Board. I don't know if that's its official title, but that's what we are. And Kevin is the chairman. He was really supposed to be here to present this, but he can't because he's traveling for his job.
Yep.
So I just want to make sure we get through
Thank you.
these points, and then, feel free to ask any questions, but we're kind of straying from this, so I want to make sure that you guys hear this. So, these are really important points. If we go back, Tim, to the slide before this one.
Before the business overview.
There's the first slide is historical and current, there you go, thank you. So, these are just important facts that, as a board, we felt really need to be in front of you, right? Because there's a lot of focus on the immediate year and the next year, but we want to look at some history. So, over the past 6 years plus, it's been profitable the entire time, and the $647,000 is Kevin's calculation of the profit during that period. 412 plus K has been put into retained earnings. 235K has been put into a capital improvement fund. The fourth bullet's important, that each year the estate self-funds $30,000 of its own maintenance, improvement work out of its operating budget. We pay the town a transfer fee each year of $39,000 to $79,000, which goes into the general fund. And over 7 years, that's contributed quite a bit, $400K to the general fund, in addition to the profit. So now, down the last two bullet points on this slide, right? For fiscal year 19, the town was projecting a loss of about $26,767, and that was not considering the event this weekend that Ellen was just talking about, right? So what the effect of that would be is it would bring the retained earnings number down a little bit. And this is where I want to put in a personal note, right? I'm a business person myself. I'm in a service business, actually. And there are times when you have glitches, right? You want to always see your sales increase and your profits increase, and it's nice. But that, in the real world, God bless the companies that can do that. Not every company can do that. And many times any company or any entity will have a downturn. It just happens, right? There can be a million reasons why. But my concern about all of this is a personal viewpoint now, is that we're really zooming in on a small period of time and not considering the longer term here, right? This has a good track record.
For these years, I mean, prior to
Yeah.
this, the estates struggled for a very long time.
Prior to this
Prior
past
to
6 or
7
7
years.
years?
Yeah, so my point is, the up and down, like, yes, I mean, because I remember the first time it ever came up about we should be selling the Stevens estate was when Rick Nardello, which you guys don't even know, was on the Board of Selectmen, and he was promoting that. And, the same sort of things that,
Okay.
people feel very personally about the building and,
Yeah.
and didn't want to see that happen, but he was right. I mean, it was, which is an interesting thing for me to say, he was right, so please take note of that, that it wasn't profitable, as a matter of fact, it was losing an awful lot of money, and a lot of things.
We've spent a lot of time.
Yeah, and
over
an
the
awful lot of
years.
things had to change to really work hard to try to make it up to be profitable again.
Okay.
So, and as you can see, we actually have a nice little chart here to show the downturn now. So I'd have to say over the last 10 or so more years, 15 years, how long have we actually owned it?
Well, we've owned it since 1994.
Yeah.
And it's really been operational probably since the late 1990s.
I mean, I would say the blip would be the profitability, not the downturn.
Okay, so I don't have that personal perspective because I've been paying
No,
attention to
but
this
I
then.
don't know where the
But,
chart came
But I
from.
also,
All right.
too,
So-
I just want to add that
Sure.
I agree with you, Dave, being in business like I've been all my life, both mergers and acquisitions and growing and diversifying things. I do look at trends, and I also look for blips. And obviously, looking at numbers that are both audited as well, they're audited numbers for most part. 2016 was your banner year. And then 17 and 18, after you've paid for the transfers, and we'll talk about the transfers in a second, and put money aside for capital improvements, which are really needed,
Yep.
you had losses. $37,000, $18,000, $19,000, again, from audited financials. So 19 is a funny number. Man, sorry, Lynn, I've seen all kinds of different numbers on it, so I don't know what to make of it. But,
Yeah.
I think the point is that, right now, the trend for me was the last 2 actual years.
Okay. I'm curious what
Where
you're,
those numbers
what you're
come
looking at.
from.
but-
No problem.
And where you can find it, if you go to the town website, like the banner, you can
Yeah.
click on that, and all the documents to the left on the website, just for
Okay, so this is a-
This is included in the packet of documents that
Oh,
the town
okay.
has on their website.
Yeah, okay.
We've seen some of these, but the numbers started out as an $80,000 loss in April, which
Okay.
is not there. So
But Tim's point is that considering,
If I had looked at just the
16 was a very
Yeah.
good year,
Would-
yes.
If I take a look at just the period of 2012 to 2018, which I summarize to the right,
yeah,
I'm trying to be fair here. There's not 647,000, it's 375, still profitable after you've paid for transfers and capital improvements, but it's not 647.
okay, I see.
And that's an important element, is that I think in this whole conversation about what the numbers mean and what they don't mean. And one of the things I want to point out is contribution to the general fund is a little bit of a misnomer, because it sounds like you're putting revenue, or adding revenue to the general fund. You're not. What you're doing is sharing in the allocation of expenses, health insurance, pension cost. I know you don't have only many people there, but still, property insurance, all kinds of things that are allocated, it's called shared services, allocated to the Stevens estate based on a principle, probably a 3-factor formula of types, that the auditors have provided to the town to allocate these costs. It is sharing the cost. So you may think you're funding it, but you're actually paying for your accountant. You're paying for your payroll
Yes, we know
service. You're
that.
paying for all of that stuff
But
through
all
that
town
money.
properties do that.
Pardon me?
Other town properties
all town departments do this.
Right.
So it isn't something unique to yours.
No,
And
that's
again,
where
it's
it
based on,
goes.
it's based on a set formula that basically tries to accurately allocate those type of shared costs amongst the parties. So I just want to make sure that for purposes of the record, it isn't like you're being asked to give. It's being, if you had to go out and buy your own accountant, if you had to go out and pay your own,
Absolutely.
if you had to pay your own life insurance and health insurance and stuff, you'd be paying far more probably than what you're paying right now.
Okay. I mean,
Just a
that's-
point.
So
Yep.
your point is that the word contributed is not exactly the right flavor word.
No, they're sharing
It's
the
not a
cost.
contribution, it's
No,
a
it's not.
reimbursement for shared costs.
Right.
That's a very different thing.
That was the
Okay.
intent for that.
I think if you want to bring it down to a nutshell, that's how I'm reading
Okay.
what you just said. Oh, okay, thank you. I was looking for that. I couldn't find it.
For him.
Oh,
I'm taking it from the budgets, I'm taking it from the audited financials, I validated it to the audited financials, went back to each of the years on the audited financials to validate it. The only suspect numbers, now, to be frank with you, is 19 and 20, or 19 because it seemed to be a bit of a moving target a little bit relative to where are we.
Sure.
But, you know, I've highlighted, for example, a couple things. One, there's been no transfer to capital during the period 2012 through 15. Then I think there's a discipline that came into play here, especially since you became profitable, a discipline to try to help with the capital, if I'm incorrect. But I also highlighted in there, just because I'm an analyst kind of thing, that we paid a lot in 2017 for advertising. I'm not sure it was all in there, Ellen, but our sales didn't really reflect the substantial increase in advertising, just as a data point. And I'm not trying to be picky, but it's
No,
like,
I
but it's one of those
understand.
things that, you know, and
It jumps out at you.
It does.
It does jump out.
exactly what
But
you said
there's-
before.
There's,
Yeah, yeah.
I think on a day-to-day operational, that probably needs someone that is actually working with the estate. She's not an accountant, she's a salesperson. And she does cleaning of toilets and everything else, so that's a whole
Well,
nother-
I'd like to get through this.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go through the
before we
presentation.
do,
I'm sorry.
Because there's a lot
I
of,
paused you there, Dave.
yeah, no, it's okay, but there'd be a lot of other, I mean, there's plenty of things to say and. that
I'll
we
try
would
to
like-
keep my mouth shut.
No, but that we'd like to offer, anyway.
This slide still or next one?
Well, just
No,
the
we're
last
still on the
point,
last
yeah,
one.
the last point here about the projected loss. As a committee, anyway, we disagree with the number for the reasons stated there. It's not taking into account the things that we think we could accomplish, or we think that the state could accomplish. And we're concerned about some of what's happened, not just the history that Lynn just shared about the moratorium, but, you know, if it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you scale back everything back, then obviously you can't sell, right? And if you know, the director's job is to sell and you take away her selling tools, that she's
I get
pretty
you.
much guaranteed to fail.
Just take away your legs kind of thing.
And
Right.
just on that note, the assistant town manager, before she left, Megan was researching how there was not a, when money goes in one place, how it turns. I'm not really sure what the wording was, in last October, she mentioned before she left, she was trying to go back a few years because the money that was being funneled one direction to the town general fund, some of it should have been coming back to the Stevens estate as some of the profit. She was going back a few years and had not finished. So I don't really know.
Tim, I need to speak to that.
I
because-
have a
Because I
problem.
wasn't sure, she never got a chance to.
No, I have a problem with that.
I do
Typically,
too.
I
shared
don't know how
allocation
the
is shared
wording is, and
allocation.
Lynn, you'd be best to, you were at that meeting. She was trying to describe how there was something in the way it went in, something was supposed to be shown
I don't
back.
know.
I'm not really sure. I never got an answer from that.
You know, everyone has different opinions.
Yeah.
I set up shared services, consolidating $350 million of accounting services in an organization I was last at. And so I was able to save a lot of money, so I know something, and then we allocated the shared cost out to a bunch of people, right? In this case here, I think it's as simple as, what would it cost you to pay on your own these kinds of costs. And,
Oh, as opposed to having the quote-unquote tax on you for.
or the
Yeah.
share, I call it shared, you can
Shared.
call it tax, but it's shared. In fact, by the way, in my old company, they call it tax too.
That's what we call
But-
it where I work.
Yeah, there you go. But how much would it cost you to have your own? And say, am I getting fair value for this? You may not like the fact that you gotta pay it, but if you didn't
Well, I
pay it,
just think
it's
there
okay.
needs to be that communication so that everybody's working off the same accounting, where Joanna is not in accounting.
Okay, I can't speak to that.
But
really,
I
no.
just would like to know some of the words that were used last October, we never got back to that.
Okay.
Megan had said she had seen a
speak to
trend
that,
and
Tim?
she wanted to.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
I think that's
I would
appropriate
love
for
to
Lynn
hear
to,
it.
Yeah.
to speak to that.
Yeah.
So that we are all clear, and it may just be a misunderstanding of
And that's
of
why I never understood.
what someone does every day. and
So what I believe you're referring to, Ellen, is there was a discussion that the Stevens Estate, when they had an event, they would have different add-on items that were outside of the rental of the estate. So we have set rates for the rental of the estate. And it included specific tables, specific chairs, specific linens. And if one of the clients came in and said, well, I don't like those tables, I want farm tables. So what that is called is a pass-through, okay? So what was happening was, and we went back for this full year of FY19 and corrected it all, because I was not aware of this pass-through
That's the word I
incident,
couldn't-
okay?
It's okay, I'm actually familiar with that word too, but.
Right, and so what they were doing is they were taking in the revenue, because we would make the client pay for these farm tables.
They being
They'd have-
Stevens Estate?
No, the client being the person that's renting the estate for the wedding.
Oh, okay.
They would be responsible to pay for the farm tables, and it might be $3,000 more over and above the rental of the estate. What they were doing was they were taking that $3,000 and depositing it into the revenue source for the Stevens Estate. Nothing went to the general fund. It's all in the Stevens Estate receipts. What they should have been doing is reduce the expense expense line for those 3,000. So an invoice for 3,000, the revenue for 3,000, it washes it out.
Yeah.
And it was
That's
coming
not
out
what-
rental or something, I remember.
Correct. So what we did was we did a complete analysis. We went back for every event within fiscal year 19 and reversed that. So you got to understand, your revenue went down and your expenses went down, and
Yeah,
it was
so
a
it's
wash.
Net-
It was
net-
nothing.
It's a pure accounting.
Okay.
Net- net
It's a
is-
pure
Pure
accounting
accounting,
function at the
that's
corporate.
right.
Yeah.
No
then-
money was put into the general fund
Net,
whatsoever.
no impact.
And
I just
nothing
thought
needed to be
invoice.
paid. No.
I didn't know, and that's
Okay.
why I wanted to ask. I
Right.
never heard the end result. Megan left.
Okay, that kind of, I know you want to get through this presentation, but that
Okay.
brings up the same issue.
With the
You had
enterprise.
mentioned something about the wedding that just happened this weekend.
Yep.
It was 26,000 plus 8,000, and that's not included in this
Yeah.
Can I
loss projection. And my question is, that's not pure profit, right? That's
No.
just billing.
No.
So
Can I-
you
right.
can't, that number, I don't understand that number. I know there was a wedding that cost somebody got billed $34,000, but the estate didn't make $34,000.
No.
No.
And can I
So-
clarify that?
Yeah.
Okay, so the bar, absolutely. The bar revenue came in a little over $8,000. I am not
Is that pure
disputing that.
profit?
No,
Or-
of course, we have to pay for the alcohol and
Right.
bartenders and everything.
Okay.
That's not pure
Right.
profit, but that was based on that booking, it pulled in $8,000. The $26,000 for the food is not the estates. We get a
Right.
percentage of
Caterer. You
that.
get a-
So you
yeah.
can't
That's all.
include
You can't
that
count it.
in the profit of the estate. It-
Yeah.
You can include the percentage though.
Right, but.
So
I-
if it's
that's the
10% or
fee to the
20%.
Right, but we account for that as
2,600.
far as some of the projections as to an account, there's a cost per head. So if there's 300, there's a calculation on the bookings report for a projection of so much per head. So that is already built into the projections unless the head count
So-
was incorrect.
Lynn,
Understood.
fair question.
Yes,
Was this particular wedding on Saturday included in the projections?
it was. But it was based on the estimates that were given to us from the director on the bar estimates and the catering estimates. The rental was the rental, that was already included. So those are the only two items that are could
So an
fluctuate.
increase over the bar bar tab that was unprojected.
Right.
And then if there was any
Right.
significant change in headcount, the percentage per head
Would
would be
change.
over and above what was in the projection.
So that's some
Okay.
Right,
percent,
and it
so
could
the
be
bar is some percentage
$1,000.
of
It's
8,000.
not 8,000
8,000.
or $26,000.
Right.
So I
So it's
need
some
to
percentage
clarify
of
that.
those
No,
numbers.
there is a
That's correct.
percentage, I
Right.
didn't
So-
say
All right.
there wasn't.
Understood.
All right,
Yeah.
it just,
But I'd like to show that it's,
I'll be the independent CPA, which I'm not, but, I mean, I am a CPA,
Yes.
but I'm not independent here. So, bottom line is that you did improve incrementally the
Yeah.
projected
Bottom line.
loss, bottom line. And that's where I mentioned in the 2019 budget, it's not gonna be, a final number until June 30th. And whatever I'm trying to do right now is just clarify some of the terminology. I agree that our bottom line is probably going to move a little bit, who knows? And I can't disagree that perhaps some of your bookings were impacted by that brief moratorium. I can't argue against that. But at least it was lifted. And it gives you some.
It was lifted, but not
Damage
permanently lifted? Yeah.
Granted.
Yes.
So just to question, and I don't know, but to be fair, right? So if the fiscal year, so if FY19 ends June 30, right? This moratorium was April to May. My understanding is you book a wedding at least 12 months in advance, so you would have been projected to have this loss anyway, typically, or, because
these weddings that were going to be booked for this summer, they do get married sooner. They look for dates that are available sooner, if not towards the fall, and they weren't allowed to
So
book.
someone in April was gonna book a wedding for before June 30th?
2 months, they're gonna plan on
2-3
it.
months is some of the trend. Believe me, there's reasons. We have one
Really?
father-in-law that is passing away, they want to get married before his 6 months. I mean, there's different stories to every booking.
Seems like an
Understood.
aberration.
Okay.
There's different other events that book.
And understood, you could have a bar bat mitzvah, you could have some, I understand, but a big, heavy hitter, 300-person wedding probably wasn't getting planned in 2 months. I think that's right, I mean, relatively,
But
I'm just trying to get a
during the moratorium,
percentage.
if there was
Seems
another
like-
check coming in,
Seems like such a huge wedding would just be like so
No,
long.
Right.
Dave, you were
Okay.
smiling a
Dave.
little
Yeah,
bit.
I just want to get through
he
it.
wants to
Get through it.
Well, just because I'm afraid some of it's going to get lost.
right, so from the
Okay.
revenue.
Move it on.
the Forecast.
So I'm actually
It may
interested in the
not be-
last bullet, really.
Yeah. So talking about next year, right? So I can't help it. I look at this in a, I'm come from the for-profit world, right, where we sell products and services, and sales is a real important function, right? And it is here too, and I think that my understanding, and I've only been on this advisory board since November, so I don't have a lot of history here. But what strikes me as a relatively fresh face here and looking at these numbers coming from the background I do is that, it sounds to me like there was a staffing issue. And we're feeling the impact of that now, right? Where they didn't have full staff 12 months ago, they didn't make the sales they should have been making, and now we're feeling it. I feel like it's at least potentially correctable, right? That if it were properly staffed and we gave the tools they need, they should be able to perform. And if they're not, frankly, we should get rid of the management. That's how it works in my world.
How is it
Lots
being,
of
could you
staff.
just,
But
How is it
what
being
I'm saying is, I understood from the meetings I've attended and the things I've heard, that 12-plus months ago,
Gail left.
there was a staffing issue, meaning there was one person gone and one person sick. And we're talking about a staff of about 3.
Right.
So essentially, the director was by herself and trying to be salesperson, operations manager. This is the story. Without drilling into it, I don't know. But you're going to suffer if you're understaffed like that, especially when you're dealing with such small numbers. It's one thing if my big company loses 2 salesmen, we don't even feel it, right? But if a 3-person company loses 2/3 of its sales,
It hurts.
it really hurts. So I can't say I've analyzed this super deeply, I haven't, but just like from where I sit, I go, well, it's certainly plausible that could impact sales 12 months later when, as you pointed out, there's a 12-month typical sales cycle, at least on the big events. So, if I take at face value what's being presented to me, then that person, we probably ought to give her a chance to see if she can dig out of it.
Right.
And that's exactly what did happen, and
What's-
during December, 3,500 people walked through there, and that produced all of these tours, January and February, among other inquiries. And then April came.
What's the staffing? So when you're saying there's 3 people, so could you just explain, you said there's a director?
So
what are the-
there's a director,
Yeah.
there was well, you know better than me, but I believe there's always been a full-time director, or at
There's
least
a
all this
20-hour
recent history.
event manager. And then there was a full-time event and bar manager, who also did sales and tours and anything else.
I thought headcount was 2.
2 full-time.
Two full-time plus part-time.
So
So to
someone
get to
was
the
let
last
go,
point.
Or
oh,
was,
sorry.
someone was let go, or?
Well, recently,
Okay.
yes, as,
The full-
12 months
the
ago.
other- No,
no,
April, someone was.
two things, two independent things. There was a recent layoff, but 12 months
12
ago,
months
there was
ago,
someone,
we're
out-
down
I believe,
to
out
people.
sick for a long period of time, right?
And then someone else was gone, is what you said.
Gail?
There were 2 people
No,
gone.
don't-
Yeah.
12 months ago.
Gail was full-time, well, not full-time, I think she was 25 hours. I think that's what she, Gail Love, she got hurt, then came back, and then retired from the Stevens estate, left.
Okay.
The other person was out on disability.
So when did Gail leave?
A year ago, April,
And when the person was on disability for how long?
during that same time too, almost through the fall.
Your point taken, David, is
So that during peak selling season.
we have, when you
without-
got you've got 1,000 people, you don't feel the pinch as much as,
Right.
but
But the success is felt in December, where there was so much attention brought and people walking through. We were feeling successful and seeing all those tours happening. I was bringing people up or referring, and then
What happened in December that triggered that?
holidays, 3,500 people, a free event to
Oh,
see the
okay.
open house.
Mm.
A lot of inquiries, followed up all those inquiries, and then tours started again January, February, into March. And then people were told they couldn't book.
so do you have a different plan than what the budget is for 2020?
Well, so if I could finish the last
Go ahead.
bullet point first,
Yeah.
just, and then we at least just be done with that one. Right, so as a committee anyway, we feel the projected loss number is too high, that it represents no further bookings in FY '20, and we would expend the entire expense budget, and the point is, obviously if the revenue's down, the expenses are gonna go down.
Yeah.
So that, we feel that number is a little harsh. Okay, so now to your point about the plan, so you're saying you need to rectify the,
I mean, we disagree with this number is a pretty strong statement. And I would say, I'm here to listen.
Do
So
you guys have a projection?
do you
you
have
have
different
yeah, I mean,
numbers?
Different
I
projection?
don't, I don't, but I don't know if you do.
The projection would be to get back the kind of weddings we just had by, and she did before the moratorium, she attended a historical venue open house, which was being held at the Pierce House, and several inquiries were received about visiting the Stevens Estate. Pierce House is even smaller, it's out towards Western. But to have her, or others, and I have suggestions for the board to be more involved as well, to actually be the marketing team until we could actually show that more staff needs to be put on, just for that reason. There needs to be, as a marketing person myself, not just event planning, but marketing, you need to get the word out there. There needs to be more than just a couple people talking about it or in town referring. So people do walk through several venues before they make a decision. And we need to catch those, these bridal shows, et cetera, et cetera. There's costs related to those bridal shows. So she doesn't want to have that cost, so she won't pay an admission fee to have a booth, let's say. Some are little, some are more. Andover Townhouse charged and then returned the charges because they realized they shouldn't charge other venues to be at their bridal show. But those are the kind of things you need to get physical bodies to make sure people know about the Stevens Estate if you don't have a big advertising budget.
So what I'm hearing right now is there's a size issue here, right? I mean, one person can't do everything.
You know.
You gotta have breadth and stuff like that, and you need more. And I'm gonna stop there because I'd like to go to the next slide to sort of
Yeah.
talk about the business overview, which I'm not sure what that really says.
Oh, so this, I think, was intended to try to give just a sort of a high-level view of what it looks like as a business. You know, I guess a couple of the things on here we've already talked about. Right? So Kevin was trying to summarize a lot of discussion we had as a board, right, in this slide. You know, the operationally at the moment, our belief is everybody's pretty happy with it in terms of the people that are using it, right, that are paying for it. That's the first two bullets. Bookings are definitely down. We talked about that. Again, without spending many zillions of hours analyzing this, you know, my personal opinion is that it was a staffing shortage. If I had, maybe there's more. Maybe there's management issues, right? But there's no doubt the bookings are down, and they're projected to be down for next year. Now, there are things that could be done about that. Is the point I was trying to make earlier. And again, I've only been part of this personally 6 months or so, but the committee believes, right, that as I understand it, our board had more than an advisory role in the past, and Kevin's suggesting we go back to being more active, being more of an actively managing, in more of an active management role.
Do you have a formal charter?
You know.
That was asked at the
Yeah.
last board meeting.
I don't
We have
know.
one tomorrow morning.
So because that was my question too. I wanted to know if there, what
It
your,
was never presented
It's,
to me.
how long have you been on the board, Ellen?
Well, I got on the board in September, had the seizure, and didn't come back till November.
Oh, so we're both effectively
So,
newbies
But
then.
I've been, like I said, actively referring for about 10 years. So it's more about, I don't know the business end of the Stevens Estate, except that
no, I guess what I'm asking is.
Yeah,
your
you were saying,
group
what's our
at-
official role?
Yeah, what's
Yes.
your role? I mean,
So-
your advisors, I mean, do you have a charter? Do you have bylaws? Do
I
you
have-
have a mission statement?
We
What is
followed the-
what is the mission statement of the advisors of the Stevens Estate?
Can I interject?
Please.
So if you look on the town's website, there's actually a really excellent letter to the Board of Selectmen that Andrew Mailer wrote in February of 2018 that has a timeline of how these articles were, like, the Stevens Estate was originally purchased, and then some of the history and what he can and cannot find, or the town can and cannot find in terms of documents. And one specifically, and I just had it, and it is gone, and you may have it too, Tim. But in 1997, the Board of Selectmen sponsored Article 16 of the 1997 annual town meeting, which establishes the trustees of Stevens Estate at Osgood Hill to oversee and manage the former
Right.
BU Conference Center, including but not limited to the function hall. This decision appears to be at least in part an attempt to clarify the reference to a legal entity in Article 7 of,
And that's what Diane.
you know, blah, 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 blah. So, I think what this is showing, and Lynn, am I articulating this correctly, that you were,
You are.
that historically the goal is for you to, for the board to have a more oversight,
Maintain.
but that there was supposed to be a formal plan presented, right? Is that, and there was no.
There is, if you look, and
Or
I
was-
think it was probably added to the website today, is that
Oh.
actual Article 16 from the 1997 town meeting.
Yeah,
That
It doesn't give,
describes-
it doesn't give all the language though, it's
full
just the minutes.
specifics, but I mean, that's the most that we could find. That's
So-
what
oh,
we-
I didn't see their actual article, okay,
Yeah.
it's on there now?
And-
It was
I've
supposed to
been-
be uploaded
yeah.
today.
Okay.
And I've been given to understand, at least in the 4 or 5 meetings I've been at, that our role is strictly
Has been
advisory.
changed,
Right.
but we don't
And-
know where it's been
right.
changed.
Yeah.
So we went back to the original when it became an enterprise, and they formed a board, is what I've been shown through
So-
other members.
Yeah,
that
I read that.
took part in the sale.
Let me give you some, the
Sure.
minutes aren't complete relative to what a charter, in my role refers to, but it does have key words in here. Over the care, management, and fiscal oversight of the Stevens Estate at Osgood Hill, including all land and buildings thereon. The trustees were to develop and present to the Board of Selectmen no later than September 15th, 97, a definitive financial plan for the management of the conference facility, including but not limited to the funding of the rehabilitation, repairs, and required improvements in the conference facility, outline the report entitled The Stevens Estate of Osgood Hills Conditions Assessment Recommendation, blah, blah, blah. Or, in the alternative, a final definitive plan to sell, lease, or otherwise dispose of the conference facility. Now, in Andrew's timeline, which was presented as well to the trustees of the Stevens Estate, things got lost. Would you believe it? There is no record of a management plan ever presented to town meeting. There is some indication that maybe something verbally was presented, but you won't find slides, you won't find a bullet presentation, you
And I
won't find any of
have-
that.
I've had numerous calls from people from the commission, Kathy Stevens, other people that have been on the board. They remember something being presented. Putting our finger on it, I've only had a few months to,
I wish it was, because it would provide your trustees a foundation.
well, that's when we finally met each other in November, because I came in without a meeting and then sat down in November. We asked,
Yeah.
is there a charter? We follow the rules of board, we make motions and things like that, but there's
Kevin?
nothing in writing.
Yeah, Kevin may think that there was a management oversight, or maybe it's advisory. I don't know what the charter says. It implies
Well,
a
he said it used to be management
So who
7
ma-
years ago.
Who was the management on the trustees then?
What's his name? I run into him all the time. Bully. No,
Foley?
Boudreau? Dave
no,
Boudreau?
Dave wasn't. He came afterwards.
But you know what I mean? Is that when you talk about
LaFond
management,
or-
you're talking about management. You're not talking
Right.
about a trustees group. Trustees is like a board of directors, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. But we're like, or at least I believe our function is advisory, not like a board of directors. And a board of directors can fire the CEO and take over the
Well, you're
company.
called the Estate Advisory Board.
Right.
Right there
But
in
they don't
the,
know where that came from, because
Huh.
that's what they call us. But from what we understood, it was the trustees of the
So
estate.
somewhere, something got migrated, you think?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's what we were trying to figure out in
But,
November.
But would it change things?
Yes, because we would want daily
Right, well,
management of it. We would like to know.
I'll be even stronger than that.
Yeah, but
I
it-
think right now, if we were a true board of trustees, the director would report to us, just like a board of directors, the CEO reports to a board of directors.
Unfortunately, this is not a corporation.
No,
so-
no, I understand,
Yeah.
right? But if it was a board of trustees, wouldn't that still be true?
No.
No,
No?
not in
Oh.
a
the
She's
government
municipality.
She's a town
situation, not
employee.
Okay,
the-
so
yeah.
so regardless,
But
it wouldn't be that.
we could have
Tom.
communications
Okay.
and hands-on with things
See,
that
and
happen on a
that's
daily
one of the
basis.
issues with, unfortunately, with how the whole estate is run, is
Yeah.
because it is owned by the town. So the town, the Board of Selectmen, or even yourselves as a
Volunteer.
as a formal committee that reports to the Board of Selectmen, you're under the same obligation of open meeting laws.
Right.
Is that everything you discuss about the estate and how it's run, it's supposed to be just like this meeting,
Right.
in the open, or with open meeting laws.
Okay.
Therefore, all the things that you have to discuss, good, bad, ugly, whatever, are in the public domain. So you can't talk about, the failing bathrooms without everyone hearing that. I'm just, as a for instance.
I get
but-
it, yeah.
But I mean, and not only that, personnel issues, there's a
No,
million
not
different things
personnel. I
that is
just mean
extremely difficult for a
Participation in
municipal
the marketing,
entity.
participation in, like, we all volunteer.
Oh, no, I understand
that's-
that.
it's
We're all
in for-
volunteers too. I
You're
get
in
that
for a
very
penny.
No,
much.
we
Sure.
volunteer at the estate because there is no staff. So we put together all the vendors that participate at the estate.
So it makes
We
me-
actually,
It makes
more or
me
less
uneasy.
run
It
holidays.
makes me uneasy that the way the whole estate is run is supposed to be within the confines of the open meeting law and process, like all of these committees and subcommittees are, and that,
oh, I don't want to run it. I'm just wanting to.
No, Chris is
help with
making
the
a point,
marketing.
though.
my point is that it doesn't seem to be
No.
functioning that way, that
Yeah.
you're outside of that. And I'm not even trying to be critical, like you shouldn't be doing that. I don't know how you could possibly function without
Right,
going
that's the point.
outside of the open meeting law and the
Well, the
structure
town
of
knows
committees.
what board meetings.
That doesn't.
Doesn't matter.
That doesn't matter. I'm talking
They
about
are
following open meeting laws.
But
I'm
they are
following-
open, anyone can.
No, the meetings are open, but there are rules with open meeting laws. You can't have conversations with your board members via email, for instance. You can't meet together outside of the cameras with
And you
with a
can't be,
majority.
you can't be directing a town employee.
Yes,
can't
and Tim-
direct
Tim's point was.
Effectively, what you would be doing
Right.
is the
So I see.
manager of the Stevens estate would be reporting to you, and you're not elected officials, you're
Got it.
not contracted officials. It's not, it's not a tenable structure within the confines of
Yeah.
a municipality.
So
and the
Tim's
way
point
they
is
run it.
advisory board or trustee doesn't
It
really
doesn't
make
really
any
matter
difference.
Matter.
because it
These are
doesn't really work that way.
Structural issues on
No,
how
Dave,
the
just-
estate is run.
Just so you know, with the
Yeah.
finance committee, we don't have a vote on a budget. We don't direct, we don't tell Lynn how to prepare our budget. We don't, our job as citizen advocates is basically to oversee, does it make good financial sense for the town, and we're your representatives at this meeting. And there have times we've been brought up, we have actually raised topics such as OPEB. My God, $110 million liability, what are you gonna do about it? Something has been done. Now we're looking at pension costs, we're looking at the Greater Lawrence Sewer District is potentially coming down. Ours is to look out there.
Yeah.
But if so-and-so wanted to buy a car from his brother as part of the town budget, we want to see that, and we would stop that, and we could stop that. I mean, not by vote, but boy, we have a voice, right?
Right.
Your
Okay.
voice.
I see what you're saying. So your point is really wouldn't make much of, or any difference.
But you know what? You guys are smart. I'm hearing Ellen for the first time in her business. I'm hearing you as well. And what's not really come together is the gel of, geez, you're a corporate business guy, a business plan.
Right.
That it actually says, here's what we need in order to get on target. We haven't even talked about capital improvements yet.
Right.
You know,
Which are
and there's a couple $1 million of capital improvements to
Yeah.
get, because your charter isn't just the conference center. It's the
Exactly.
carriage house, it's the barn, or whatever those things are
And
called, and
there's 5
everything.
other lots
Yeah.
also on Osgood that is part of the estate as well. And that's been brought up in the past, what those lots could be valued and should that, which has.
We're in
no
Osgood.
touch- On 125.
Lynn, are
it's
those
part of the
developable?
I
Those,
don't
par-
know.
I don't,
As far as I know, they are.
Are they part of the 137 acres that would go to
No.
conservation? This is
No.
different?
Yeah.
Oh.
it's frontage on the street.
When the
Oh,
town
okay.
bought the
But I don't know if
Stevens
they're-
estate, part of its covenants was, yes, I said it right that time, part of that covenants was that the Stevens family sold 3 lots to give an endowment to the town, which is
Mhm.
another question. Has it been used? I don't even know where it is. But that's just what I've been told by the
So-
Historical Society and the Stevens family.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah,
Well-
But there are other alternatives, and I think having a conversation with the finance committee would be very helpful for our board as well, to hear about. And Lynn, we need to be on the same page. We own the property.
I'm going to take this up. Dave, do you want to continue on the business overview? Because I'm pretty
Go
well.
Yeah, I mean, we've actually hit most of this at this point, right? I think,
The oversight, the guidance.
yeah, I mean, we're recommending, I guess to put it more correctly, a more active role, let's just put it that way, that we as a board would take a more active role in operations, at least a little bit more active. I fully understand what you guys were saying
Oh,
about,
absolutely.
about how we have to operate.
Don't misunderstand me. We have influence. You have influence.
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
but it's influence. It's not.
It's not operational.
Yeah.
No.
It's
So,
not
Yeah.
operational.
I guess my question,
so more active would be the better way to put it, maybe more involved, more regular. We can't be in operations,
Yeah.
you're right.
Not operations, but some of the whereas. There's
Such-
questions when an event comes in there.
And I guess, you know, I mean, the macro points here, right? If the estate is to try to operate going forward, and there's one other point I want to bring up, which isn't in here, which is regarding the proposal, because I have one big concern about that
Okay.
I think you guys should be aware of. But before I get there, you know, like, there's certain operational recommendations in here, like getting back to proper staffing levels, a little bit more oversight, probably from not just the board, but from the professionals.
town manager when he
Yeah,
was on.
and we are concerned about the liquor license being lifted, because that's a big source of
Yeah.
revenue and profit. So it's an operational concern we have, and that's the last bullet point on here.
Is that something that's being lifted, period? I mean, the new,
It's being
if it goes to
discussed.
this new.
Oh, no, for the current-
And Lynn,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I did ask about this today. So
Yep.
technically, it was a decision not to renew, but
Correct.
liquor license aren't up for renewal until December.
December 31st.
So that decision could be changed, right? Is that,
Um,
or,
I-
that's,
Poor Linda's keep getting up.
So, I believe that will not be changed.
but could it be?
It could, but you gotta understand, the town is holding that liquor license, not.
Understood.
not- Right.
So the
it is in
liability of the liquor
liability is
license is the town
on
of
the
North
town.
Andover's.
So we did research around the vicinity of any facility like this that would have, events, have weddings, parties, things like that. None of them, none of them carry a liquor license. The people that are having the event at the
It's a
at the
BYOB.
facility-
Get their own.
No.
Facility, no.
They apply
They have
for
to
a
get
single
a
day.
one-day
Right.
liquor license,
Just
no
like-
different than Smolax.
And Merrimack
In
College.
Merrimack
Right,
College.
The caterer brings in a company that comes
Correct.
with their
Oh.
insurance and they apply for a permit.
Okay.
It is a source of revenue, which
Yep.
is,
It's a day-by-day permit for each.
Correct.
each
And we would get
event.
a
Each event,
portion,
yes.
percentage
Right.
of that revenue.
So we would
No
see
different than we
revenue
do with the
decline
catering.
because of this,
Right.
but
you'd
the
have-
liability.
The expense would decline because we wouldn't be buying the alcohol.
Right.
We wouldn't have to pay for the
So
bartenders.
just percentage.
It's-
Would it change our
It's a
insurance,
serious,
too?
it potentially, I don't know the details if it could, but that would be an avenue that we'd look at.
but we do have insurance.
So this
We do have
doesn't
insurance,
limit,
and
this
that's
is
what
not,
it's for.
this is not
But-
limiting the ability for a wedding to have
No.
alcohol.
No.
All
No,
this
no,
is
no.
doing
Caterers
is
will come
changing
in
the-
changing
and
the
on-
revenue
process.
structure of
Right.
the facility.
Exactly.
So a
To
caterer
be
comes
clear.
in and the charge is sometimes $18.75, let's say. To
Okay.
have a bar service that is licensed to come in. We would
Understood.
not have our own liquor. They would bring in the liquor.
Yep.
And then they would be on consumption and they would take back the liquor. The client would take anything opened.
Okay.
So
Understood.
the percentage in the contractual part of that is that the Stevens Estate should make a percentage of what the bar is as they do with the caterer. But they lose much more revenue at that point.
Right. So one thing that we are not, just to switch gears a little bit, that this presentation doesn't cover is the deferred maintenance on the property and the significant capital improvements that will be necessary even to address some of that deferred maintenance. So as the board, what would be the recommendation on how to address that?
Yeah, so it's interesting, have you guys looked at the plan that Elegant Banquets submitted?
I have.
Yeah, so they've got tremendous plans in there, but what I found interesting, and I don't know, maybe concerns a little bit, the numbers he used when I saw the presentation at the selectmen meeting was $7 million total they want to invest, more than $6 million of it in the new building, so their opinion is less than $1 million needs to go into the existing building.
And it's not restoration, it's just some repairs. He didn't like where the pipes fit.
Respectfully, I'm not asking about them. I'm asking about if
No,
you.
I'm
No,
just saying,
for us.
an outside, my point is, I think people think it needs more work than it does.
But the existing condition survey, that it was done by a reputable group,
When,
I didn't print it. but-
Actually, I do have a 2012 survey.
Yep.
And I know several, $500,000, $450,000 worth of work has been done out of that thing. But prices have also increased as well as other maintenance requirements have been added to it. So I think, a good number of capital is probably $1.5 to $2 million, in my opinion, after reading what I've seen.
and there are funds out there.
And you think I'm a low?
that have been acknowledged.
main building.
That's just the main building?
Right.
So that doesn't address the rest of.
No.
And is,
Oh, so the carriage house is, oh my goodness, so it's a lot more than that then.
And then,
Andrew's notes said several million.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was gonna
But
say.
you're
4 or
saying
5.
that in their proposal, Elegant Banquets is not really
They're not
counting,
allocating.
they're not putting in 1.5 or 2 million, is
Correct.
what you're saying. They're putting in their $7 million mainly into the main building.
Main
Yeah,
building.
the numbers that John,
For an
Mr.
addition.
Royce presented, whereas the words he used were about $7 million, more than 6 of it into the new structure. So less than 1 into the old.
So you're basically using it as an example, as only $1 million is needed. I'm not sure if they've done a proper survey.
They actually haven't,
haven't
so
done
they
it. They
specifically
haven't
said
done
without
it.
an MOU, they weren't gonna do any significant due diligence,
Okay.
so.
They have-
That's
they
a,
haven't
that's
even-
in my world, that's a fake number, right,
Okay.
until you,
Right.
until.
There's a lot of things
Okay.
that
So
have
you've actually
changed from
looked under
meeting
the
one to
covers.
meeting
Right.
five.
So can I make one more point about that? So, okay, respect,
Okay.
Yeah.
understood what you're saying. And I haven't studied, Tim, I'm curious about what, I need to see the thing that you referred to.
What's that?
You're
2012.
to 2012.
It's on the website as well.
25.
What's it called? Is it called?
There's an existing condition.
Existing
You know what,
condition?
let me see if I can get it for you.
Actually, it is part of the
I think I could
packets
pull
that's
it up.
out there, available. This is it here.
Just what's the title of it? I'll find it.
Stevens Estate, North Andover schematic design cost estimate.
There's
and it's-
also a,
And then there's been an update about a year or so ago.
Okay.
But
But you also asked what us, as a board, what we saw. I
Yeah.
would love to get feet and hands dirty and go through and see what that says now that we're on the same
But
page.
you're concluding from that that it's like a 1.5 million plus.
But there's
to
been
bring
stuff
it-
done.
And I've been corrected saying that that's just the main house. So we're talking a couple of $1 million plus maybe, Dave. But I think with the point I really want to make is you need to put a couple $1 million of capital improvement in, right?
so call it $1 million just to be, just,
$1 million.
even if it was $1
And-
million.
I think no
how
one
does
would
that
argue
work?
with that.
There have been
Right.
groups that have come up to us to say, you know, in these meetings that we've had, there are funds available for some of the things you need to have done. So I think us as a board as well need to talk about where we need to start looking, under which rock there may be some grants or something else researched.
So has the board changed significantly in the last year or so,
Yeah.
where there's new
There's new blood.
people that are willing to spend that kind of time and energy to?
Yeah, I feel like half of us are new.
Half of us are new, and we've
Yeah.
all expressed we need to be more involved.
So
It's
no
a
doubt
size-
there's
it's a sizable investment, it
Yes.
still needs to be, in order to get
Yes.
this baby up to speed.
Yes.
This baby up to speed shined beautifully Saturday night. Not one flaw was even criticized.
Nighttime intense and all those beautiful lights and beautiful people, I gotta
That's
tell
what
you,
they
it does.
see at night.
I hear you, but you know
The
what?
toilet's flush.
But you don't want the thing falling down on top
Yeah.
of
No, you
people in
don't.
here too.
No.
There's
And-
actually
and
a
it needs
requirement,
and to be
right?
fair, it badly needs a real kitchen and stuff like that. Yeah. Look, it
There's,
needs
but
work.
isn't there requirements, because of the historical preservation
Yes.
covenants that are actually on the property? So we're liable for those improvements.
Where do they
And
stand
so
on ADA,
what
too?
happens when you
They're-
now
they're
have to
accessible.
make those and you're
We're not-
required to? Where
They're
does
accessible.
those dollars come from? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah.
And I'm having,
CPA
difficulty.
funds,
Yeah, that's a fair point, and I think that there really isn't at the moment. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've really put that kind of plan together. I think it needs to be put together.
Yeah.
But we
And that's
don't.
what we realized in November
Yeah.
when we sat down and sort of all looked at each
So,
other. and said,
so look,
"We need to
the
sit
question
down."
right in front of you guys, right, is well, how do you, when town moderator asks you for an opinion on this, right? You're gathering information to be able to present an opinion, right? Isn't that
Correct.
basically what this is? So, is it appropriate to talk a little bit about the proposal or no?
Yeah. I mean, here's, I'm gonna step back and talk about the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
We have a mission and a charter to make sure that the interests of our citizens are taken care of financially while you're here. My understanding of your charter is not too dissimilar, but it's not just to make
We don't have
the
a charter. We've established that
unofficial mission.
We believe.
Unofficial
Unofficial mission.
We do have buzzwords in here, though, that would imply that your job is basically do the best you can for the citizens of the town.
Right.
Now, I've been thinking about this meeting, like, God, I want to hear you guys. At the same time, I can't get my corporate hat off. And as a member, as a board director, which I'm not, I have to do the best I can for the shareholder, giving them the best return on investment. And if an offer comes my way that looks better than what I can do, I owe it to the shareholder, taxpayer, to give great consideration to going forth with it. There's nothing wrong with, but I think, outsourcing this facility to a company who knows what they're doing and they have the bandwidth to do it. I know we've been trying. We tried hard. We've got a great facility. It's a beautiful facility. Thank you for those pictures. But it's not our job. We're not into the hospitality business. We're into sewers and water. We're into recreation.
But we own other buildings, Tim, so that's why we're saying, when this building was bought, right in the enterprise fund when set up, it did not require a profit. It needed to break even. It says it in what they,
But as an enterprise fund, though, you need to be able to pay for
and we
yourself.
do. So what I'm saying is, if we are covering ourselves, but we're not, having these we do have savings. So if there is a downtime, there is a place to go for the dishwasher, but we have to go through the bidding process.
There
But
you
you
go.
don't, I guess yes and no, you don't though, which is where I'm struggling because deferred maintenance needs to be taken care of. And so if you can't cover your debt service for the money you take out to cover those capital improvements, then you're not self-sustaining, which is a requirement of being an enterprise fund,
So guys,
which is where my challenge is.
I
But we're
would-
not being subsidized.
This
You
is
cover
not.
that.
You're an
this is-
enterprise
This is,
fund, though.
yeah,
Yeah,
you're
but-
you're a business. This is not concrete. And it's like everything I've been talking about is a moving target, But we've had a proposal before, so now you did mention something you wanted to talk about.
did,
And I want to hear it, because
There's more questions than answers on that.
okay, this is what they're proposing, but we actually get, who knows? But let's say what they're proposing. Full-time, 8 to 10, part-time, 25 to 35. Weekend hotel room nights, 2,500 to 3,500, out-of-town guests.
And he said at the last meeting,
Wait a
there's no
second.
hotel.
Wait a
rooms.
second.
Increased business for local vendors, florists, photographers, videographers. Increased business at local area restaurants. Minimal impact on local traffic since it's at nighttime. Exposes the town to some 25 to 30,000 attendees, primarily from out of town per year who utilize the facility. Potential property tax income for town, no, that's not gonna happen because we're not gonna sell it. But we will get rental from it. I did ask, and I'm still going to push it, Lynn, we don't collect meals tax on the facility. I'm okay, especially where you're at right now with that, but if this thing ever goes through and takes off, I want to know about the meals tax,
Absolutely.
because that's a revenue source.
Sure is, right into the
And-
town, too.
My only point is, these people do have credentials relative to being in that business, Ellen.
But not in North Andover, and we can go on about that.
That's such a soft thing,
I
right?
asked him if he knew what was around here, he said he didn't really care,
Well,
and then he
Did
more
he
or less said.
say that?
Yeah, because he said he didn't have to do any competitive, he knows our competition is the Andover Country Club. I said, you know there's a country club next door here? He goes, what country club? He didn't even know North Andover Country Club existed. He didn't know about the Cranes Estate, Mistlewood, the wineries, New England outdoor weddings. He's thinking Westchester, and he's thinking of people being limoed in from Manhattan to the farmlands in Connecticut. He doesn't realize this is North Andover.
Oh, North Andover isn't an island though, is it?
It is an island because that
It's
kind
not.
of business
No,
that he
it's
was
not an
talking
island.
about.
No, it isn't.
Come on.
No, it isn't. And the other thing too is, this is where I've been chastised by fellow finance committee members to take my business half off and think more town. And I try hard. But my God, I outsource this, I would never as a defense contractor go out and buy a restaurant. I wouldn't do it. It's not my line of work. It's out of my line. It's not my comfort zone. And I guess what it comes down to is what is the resources needed to maintain an existing facility and enhance upon it that the town might enjoy. We have a kind of a disagreement on that because
And we
you're
all
comfortable
agree to
with
disagree, that's
$500,000
fine.
and you're comfortable with $500,000 in revenue every year.
But my point right from the beginning is, I think this whole proposal is a distraction from the fact that giving the Board of Selectmen just carte blanche before we can even get our feet wet.
Wait a
to
minute, wait a
figure
minute,
out.
wait a minute. That's kind of unfair.
Not unfair, we're asking town residents to vote to let the Board of Selectmen go forward with what they can, and yet it's not a done deal. So if it
We're
doesn't
we're
go-
allowing the Board of Selectmen, and I'm gonna say lease, because that's what they've agreed to go into negotiations to lease, just to go into negotiations to lease. And right now, the company that's in front of them can't even give them a proper a bid or, you know, because why would you spend all the money on appraisal work that they need
But
to
the
do
state
without knowing that they
commission-
can actually do it? And then it happens over and over and over again in the town process. This is not unique
It is
to this.
unique because the State Historical Commission needs to see something more concrete.
And they
other
will.
numbers.
They will
But he said he won't
before-
do it until this all passes.
Right,
That's
but
my
all
makes
point.
sense,
This is giving them the right to negotiate.
Negotiate, that's what I'm saying.
But if it
Just
doesn't
like,
happen, they still have the right, and it's taken away from the town to make any other decision or to investigate. any
no, no,
other-
no, no, the town meeting is going to give them the permission to negotiate with someone to perform a lease. And the negotiations, including the negotiations, would be go to the historical commission, seeing it like, this is the plan, what do you think, that goes back and forth. I could see this, it definitely would take some time. Just because a town meeting passes it, doesn't mean that they're actually even gonna enter into this lease if the historical commission hates it, or if the Board of Selectmen decide, whoa, I don't like what's going on here. They have a tremendous amount of say in the process.
But then the town loses its right to vote on what other options are available if Elegant walks away.
No, they still have the
No, they don't.
options.
No, they don't.
They always
Why
have the
would
options.
they?
Let's just say, let me just say it this way.
That they-
They're not, Lynn, you tell me I'm wrong. The deal with Elegant Banquets falls apart. I'm hopeful that I'll volunteer right now. I will work with the trustees of the Stevens Estate and help them relative to the financial planning and see where we can go. But it's not, I'm looking at it real simple. It's not my business.
It's not a sustainable business.
You know, it's just not, I'm
So
not.
can I,
I'm not-
can I speak to that a little bit? Because
Sure,
I'm
sure.
personally, now speaking personally, just as a resident, I'm not 1,000% opposed to the concept here. I kind of see where you're coming from. I get it. If I had your job, I'm not sure I'd want this baby either. I mean, seriously, and I'm with you, Tim. I'm a commercial guy, and I would, so I sell cable modems and set-top boxes. I'm not going in the restaurant business anytime soon either, for the same reason. But what I'm worried about is what happens if these nice plans that Mr. Royce presented don't happen, or only happen halfway. And that's where I'm really concerned, because given the charter to do the best I can to advise the estate on how to operate, I'm worried about what happens when their plan doesn't go through. And one of the things I'm really worried about is how they're gonna, so the way I said it at the selectmen's meeting was, you know, no matter how great a job Elegant Banquets does improving the property, it's not gonna induce a lot of new marriages. The same number of people are gonna get married whether we improve the Stevens estate or not.
Just grabbing a bigger slice of them, right?
Right. So the idea, I use the word steal, which was probably not a good word, but basically they have to take business from other vendors, right, from other suppliers. The market's not going to grow. They're going to try to get a piece of it that they don't now have. Well, they have zero now. And Stevens Estate has a tiny bit, and they want to make it big, but they've got to pay off. Their plan, as stated on, their proposal says they're going to raise 90% of that money, right, through bank loans, and they're going to try to get an SBA loan. Now, I'm a little bit out of my field here, but I'm just looking at it simply going, that's pretty ambitious, and they've got good credentials, no doubt. But if I'm a banker, I'm a little worried about this place from a cold start paying that off very fast. Now, and I asked the guy, so I said, have you done you must have done market research to convince yourself that this is there, that this market is there. I'm personally not convinced it's there, because I think the Stevens Estate would be doing better than it is if it were there. And there's plenty of country clubs, as Ellen just pointed out, and plenty of other venues around where people can go now. So what's going to make them come here and not there? And yes, brand new, nice facility, but
Maybe
are
because
they,
they're in the
I mean,
business.
if I'm looking for a brand new, nice facility, am I going to come to, why wouldn't I go to,
my hope-
Andover Country Club?
Not, again, unknowns, because
Yeah.
they're not negotiating. My hope and prayer is that they, in fact, some of the drawings they have in there seem to complement the current facility. But Dave, you know as well as I do, maybe not, but hey, look at, you're looking at going for a loan, they're not just gonna give you $7 million. They want to know what the cash flows are from not only the current proposed property, but
Right.
also from the existing properties to pay off that loan, and what kind of security are you gonna give them? So quite candid, since there's no title to transfer, I mean, it's, to me,
Right.
they either have it or they don't.
Right,
Aren't
and if
they
they,
also building a much larger, I mean, it's gonna be it's gonna be a larger facility.
A lot
They're gonna be
of-
able
oh,
to
yeah.
It's
They're-
gonna be a different category of event.
right.
You know, there's so many people getting married and so many weddings at X size. They're talking about expanding the facility to allow for bigger,
Sure,
so that
300
expands your
was their-
potential.
300 was their amount.
Yeah.
What they're doing is making it an indoor facility.
Right,
right.
which means
So it'll be
it's
12
year-round.
months
It's more
instead of
year-round.
7 months, yeah.
Right.
Lynn asked.
Sure.
just a
Yeah,
couple
I
words.
just want to clarify a couple of things as far as what happens if Elegant Banquets, so you got to understand, this vote, again, as Chris said, that it only allows, it's giving the Board of Selectmen the ability now to negotiate if this passes at town meeting. Elegant Banquets still has a long road ahead of them.
Yes, they do.
They cannot do anything to that estate without further permission from various boards within town, as well as the Historic Commission, or if that, I mean, they could say, we don't like that addition, you can't do that. You have to meet these restrictions. These are requirements, and they can't proceed until they satisfy all of those requirements. So it would be no different with Elegant Banquets or anybody else that the estate decides to bring up there. So if Elegant Banquets walks away, we go out for an RFP and somebody else gives us another proposal, they have to go through the same thing. And if nothing ever satisfies them, then guess what? Nothing gets done. And they're
I just
not
think
selling it.
we
They're
would-
willing to lease it
Yeah.
and retain ownership of it. And if nothing comes to fruition, then guess what? We're all gonna have to sit down at the table and figure out the options for
And I
that
think we
place.
should have done that a year ago.
Okay, but we're here.
But we're here now.
So that's
So
just
my
to
question
clarify
is
that.
that Elegant Banquets, he also said if things just don't finish up, he was a little bit ticked that it didn't go in May. So he's really counting on June going his way, else he said they're walking away.
That's fine.
Well, of course.
But we
why
need a
wouldn't they?
plan. We still need that plan that we
Which we would,
thought
like,
November
then
that we
look
should do.
to the advisory committee to produce a counter plan, right? So how can we make any informed decision without understanding what the go-forward plan would be if we retained ownership as the community? Or
Right.
what would happen if
But I
the
think
Board
we
of Selectmen
could have
chose to
that-
move forward?
I mean, the
But I
fact
think
that
we
you
could
two
have
are
done it
relatively
from here.
new to the board, I have compassion for that you don't have the
Well, we
actual
talked
plan
about
in
all
front
of
of you.
this the last several
But there is no
meetings.
plan. That's
There's
what we're
no
saying.
plan.
It's just like, let's say, did this a year ago? What plan? There was no plan. It hasn't come.
And also just to back up, and I don't even know if is this actually even, is this article required, the original Article
No.
7? No, this is so the original, if you read this, that's on the town
Yeah, it's
website,
not required.
Article 7, that was approved at special town meeting in 1994, actually already allows the Board of Selectmen to sell
this.
or lease the property. So I think this was probably an incredible goodwill gesture by the Board of Selectmen to
Yeah.
gauge, to garner support for this to move forward.
Yep.
I don't actually know if legally they're required to get the town support.
I mean, you
They are
brought that up at the
two-thirds.
last meeting.
No,
No.
what my point is that they already have been
They already have
given
it.
the authorization
That's right.
by the community at special town meeting in 1994,
Yeah.
when this article was originally adopted.
One of the things that was absolutely was heard was that there is an emotion and an attachment to the building. And
Absolutely.
initially, Ellen, I said the same thing as you, sell, lease, who cares? But at the same time, I like the fact of leasing, because it is a beautiful facility, it is a beautiful piece of property. And if anything untoward
But do we get
happens,
the first right of,
Yeah.
refusal, or do we?
well, it's more than that, you own the property.
We own
Yeah,
it.
there is no first
So
right
are
of
they
refusal if we
going
own
to
the
have to
property.
go through the same bidding as a town-owned property to do any of their work?
No, they're a commercial organization.
But they have to go through the permitting process. They can't just add whatever
But
they
as far
want.
as catering and.
And they have to follow all the terms of the lease. There will be a lease, which is a legal document.
Right.
And they will have to follow all the terms of that lease, which if they violate the lease, that has a whole nother set of legal
And
ramifications.
they're in the middle of a conservation area too, so there's watershed, there's all of these things. Just for my one little year on the planning board, I mean, it's extensive. They can't just carte blanche say, we can do all these things. They cannot. And by the way, those are also public meetings, and anybody who has issues with what is being built there can go and express it. And the planning board is very receptive to people saying, I have these concerns.
Yeah.
And that's why I said if these discussions were going to happen, all of these boards should have been having these open discussions together for a plan for someone to come in. Because my question is, every meeting I went to with this proposal, things kept changing. Words were coming out that weren't there at the first meeting. And when someone said to him, why all these parking lots? Then I won't build them. Well, just don't say that to let me hear you. The fact is, Saturday night, there were over 300 people there without any limo buses, and there was plenty of parking with vendors. So my question is, all that beautiful grounds, do we have a right to say, especially now as a lease property?
Yes, yes.
You cannot
Yeah, so-
build.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
So if
Because
you-
you're gonna be left with,
The answer
I
is-
believe,
the answer is yes.
personally, not board-wise, but personally, I believe it's not going to succeed the way he thinks Westchester and the farmland
So
in
your
Connecticut.
expertise is really helpful, so
But
you can
seeing
have
this
those
ballroom
conversations.
indoors, what's gonna happen to it? We can't afford to maintain that.
So that'll be his problem.
Yeah,
It
that
will
will
be
be his
his
problem.
problem.
And the short answer is yes, you will have a say. Absolutely. That's why we have the zoning board of appeals, that's why we have the planning board, that's why we have all those boards. He can put out plans to us to say, like, this is what I intend to, but he can't go further than that until the town has the ability to lease it to him, which, by the way, actually we do. But
The parking lot situation, we gotta worry about runoff, right?
Yeah,
That's Conservation
that's
Commission.
right.
So
There's a
he's not gonna be able to just, arbitrarily put
That's why I
parking
said
lots.
it's more of a distraction. I wanted to see more process on the town side and having management.
You won't see the
work
process until.
with the boards.
I think there's,
before all of
and I think
process.
everyone here, so can, if I think everyone really hears you, and there is going to be an extensive process, but the process can't happen because anyone who's gonna develop and own or operate a facility isn't going to spend all of those dollars to do
And all
the
that
due
time,
diligence to do that until they know that the town's gonna vote yes.
Yeah.
And allow, and, in this case, allow it. So
Yeah.
it doesn't mean,
Allow it to be having a conversation. but I
Osgood-
just was
Osgood's the same
concerned.
way.
Osgood's the same way, exactly the
Osgood's
same thing.
exactly the same thing.
Exactly the same
They-
thing.
They're gonna put in hundreds of thousands of dollars in planning after they get approval on the zoning changes. If they don't get approved, they haven't spent that money.
And they
That's
still
how
have to
that
get
works.
building permits for all the buildings
That's
they're gonna
right.
put up, and that's gotta go through the,
The beautiful part is
permitting
that,
process.
here's the question I have for the town, if we're to be the landlord, how, are we doing all the building like Hillwood is doing?
Yeah, no.
So you can actually structure your lease to have them to do the whole thing, guys.
It's a
It's a
land
ground-
lease.
ground
It's a
lease.
land lease.
So I
Yeah.
take one good, I'm gonna take one good thing back, well, more than one, but one important thing back to our meeting tomorrow morning, which is, I think regardless, after what I'm hearing tonight, we need to help put a plan together to operate, because this will take
Yes.
2 years at least,
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Even if everything were to go the way
Yes.
that they.
That's right, you
And-
need a
and they-
vision,
So,
you
I
need a
mean, I
plan.
think that the key takeaway here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if, your concern is that if LLC walks away, what then?
Right.
Well, you need to fill in that what then.
Right.
If-
And we kind of have to do it anyway, because it's
Yeah,
got to operate.
exactly.
You know,
So
Dave,
the
honestly,
question-
you just said is the most important thing is you gotta have a plan that you can have and
Say,
measure
okay.
against objectively, see what's going wrong, change it, and plan again. And I'll be more than happy, once you guys draft a plan, to review it and give you my personal commentary about this is what you're missing, what are your assumptions, and there are assumptions throughout all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I'd be happy to do that for you guys.
Well, it has to be done, period. We knew that in November. I believe Kevin has asked, what are the intentions if this doesn't pass? And there's been nothing presented. We
Wait,
need to
but-
move forward no matter what.
But that comes from you.
So I think that's
It doesn't come
the-
from the North Andover.
I think
Town
that's the
management.
point, that's
But
the
they
hope,
manage-
right?
this.
Right.
this-
Well, that- yeah.
The hope is that there would be a vision from the
Advisory
board that would
board,
say,
yes.
you know, given, and you'd work with Lynn and the town, so you'd clearly address some of the issues, right? A liquor license is concerning to the town because of liability. How can you get around that? And what does that look like financially? You know, how do you advertise for that? That actually could be a benefit because potentially it reduces the cost of the wedding for a bride and they come to the Stevens estate instead of somewhere else. These are things that aren't our core
No, it
competency.
won't-
but
it
you-
won't reduce
but-
these
But you guys,
I would expect.
to the
I wouldn't
Right,
expect,
no,
I wouldn't
it's still
expect
expensive.
$15 million at all in annual revenues from a town-run thing. Like, shoot, I'm gonna quit my job and work for you guys. But I would expect a couple things in the plan. One, something that not only you make profit, but also you're paying for capital improvements. Two, you're also setting aside reserves so that retained earnings, because you're gonna need a rainy day. But, you know, if this thing doesn't fall through because of what I heard some innuendos here, but, not a problem, I won't do it, from Elegant Banquets, if it doesn't go through, you got it. It's the ball's in your court. How's that, Dave, for a little voting? We're done with that era.
Yep. No, it's a fair point. We, regardless, success or failure of the bid, we gotta run the place, right? I mean, I think that's one of the biggest concerns I have is that we have to improve it.
the management.
Period.
And it's one step at a time, but it's making those steps. And right now, what I've seen so far is a lot of good intentions. Gosh, Alan, when you came in here and said, this is North Andover,
And I'm not a trailblazer, so it's not about the trails.
No, no, no.
We're out there about the trails. I like the beauty of them, I will walk the trails, but I
But
like the beauty of them.
that's a separate article, right? I mean,
That's separate.
Yeah,
But
it's on its own.
there is such potential, and I believe if everybody was in place and on board without cutting legs off at prime times and so forth, I think we could have made this not having some numbers out there that didn't make sense. And people are, especially us, saying, wait a minute, we should have had a discussion about this.
So actually, you should have had numbers, right?
Yeah.
Well, the numbers
Okay.
weren't, accounting-wise, weren't on the same page.
I've thrown
We
out. and I
recognized
think it's
that last November,
I think
and
it's-
that's when Megan started a conversation about the rental account. So we were
But
just
that-
getting into it.
Yeah,
What
let's
did
not
you
get
want to say,
into
Lynn?
Yeah, I want to reflect on the fact about the financials, and I've been trying all night not to say something. The financials that are provided by my office or by the town are audited financial statements. Anything for FY19 up to a certain point were actuals. There were projections made for several months based on information that was provided to me from the Stevens estate. Period. That's where those numbers come from. The numbers that were provided to me, then in turn were provided to the board by someone else from the estate and adjusted with estimates that were never given to the town. So
what
that's
you-
wait a
why-
second.
So that's the
Between
Wait a
way.
the
second.
estate.
No, but that's the problem with what my issue is that if the trustees need financial reports, they should be getting them from the town because they are audited financial reports. Audited, and they are award-winning audited financial reports for 7 years straight in a row. They wouldn't be an awarded financial report if they weren't accurate. So my concern is that the false information that there's different financial numbers out there needs to be rectified to the fact that there was confusion and a time period between what the estate was saying was financials versus what the town was providing because they were doing different date ranges. They were doing calendar year versus fiscal year, and no discussion was ever brought to
And the
the
management
town's
of the
attention.
estate comes from the town, and I
Yeah.
always have said since I
Yeah.
was interviewed, and appointed,
Yeah.
we need to have the two entities work together, come up with a document, et cetera, et cetera. But the latest piece of paper out there from our Board of Selectmen said we've not been profitable for many years. So again, there's paperwork out there
Wait a
that is.
second, but at the last meeting, Regina did not say that. She
I didn't say Regina, there's a piece of paper being produced out there that says the estate has not been profitable. What you hear, what you read.
I've
No,
never seen it
I'm
done.
talking about, actually,
So-
I'm sorry.
So anyways, I think we're going off topic. a
Yeah,
little bit.
that's true.
And, you know,
That's just splitting hairs here.
You've showed us some sides of this whole argument that I think we all need to think about. I'm not sure if anyone has any more discussion or questions of Dave and Ellen. They've given me some second thoughts, and especially you two newbies.
We've been gung ho to get into the nitty gritty part of all
I
of
got-
this
I
and
got- I
try
got
to get
that.
this
I got
to
that.
be premier, and
I got,
all of a sudden
I
everything
got
starts
the
getting
passion.
cut.
I got the passion, no doubt about it. And it's a matter of, geez, you know, where can we go? What can we do? And what I always think about the best for the town.
Yep.
And I do thank you for your participating here. This was a good meeting, a very good conversation.
No one's blind blame anywhere. I would just like the fact that we would like some discussion, and we would have loved some more discussion among the boards that all have a part in this. And when there were discrepancies, however you want to call it, Lynn, with numbers being thrown out there, people are talking, people are listening, people heard comments on TV, or they just want to get rid of it. And I know it wasn't maybe intentional, or was it? I don't know.
You know,
But
first
it's
of all,
hurtful.
let's put that to bed.
Right.
It is not an intention to get rid of it. We're not tearing or raising the building.
No, but
Okay.
it's
Not
hurtful
even
when we're
selling
trying
it.
so hard to think of a plan to move forward, and then moratorium hits, and then business gets,
Okay, well, we don't need to.
We hash
Yeah,
that.
so I get that.
So we
So
heard
thank you.
that, and it is
I still
acknowledged.
appreciate you guys taking the time. I know you've been to a lot of meetings. It sounds to me like it, you
Yeah,
know,
you
more than I
have.
have.
Yeah,
Thank you.
But,
it's a lot of work.
hey, you can take these home and read them if you want. That's the
We'll take
financial
it
audit, this is
tomorrow.
the budget, this is the capital improvement plan. I'm kidding. But,
just wanted you to know though, that, like I said, if there is work to be done, it has been done slowly. Other estates, other historical properties are very much in the same boat. What was shown on Saturday night, what was seen by all those guests was exquisite. It was magnificent. The moon was just in the right place for all the pictures. The deer were poking through the woods. There were no mosquitoes, and it was.
I don't know.
How'd we do that?
Yeah, I
There was
don't know.
no mosquitoes.
That's magic.
All of those gowns were strapless. I mean, nobody was talking mosquitoes. But the nice part
They
is
were all in my yard,
walking-
for the record. They
Right,
flew
they all
down the
flew
hill.
down.
And they.
But people were walking through the
Yard.
estate and asking questions about the history of the estate, and it was lovely. And 3 people asked to have their events there next year. I think they make the September 20th moratorium again. So we have that on the back of our mind. People that are asking beyond September, again, it
So-
affects the bottom line.
So let's see where this vote goes.
Yeah.
Next. Let's
Yeah.
see where, what it means. For all intents and purposes, you know, you never know after the vote at the town meeting a week from tonight. This baby is in your lap, and I'm gonna say, show me the plans.
And I would like to work with each and every one of the departments to make this plan very successful, because I still believe that the state is a treasure in town,
It always will be.
and it always will be.
Yep.
Unless it looks.
No, always will be.
That's probably part of what makes it so complicated.
That's
If it
the
weren't like
complicated.
that,
If
it would
they
be a
were
real
just
easy
taking over
decision.
and restoration
No,
and everything
absolutely.
else,
Okay.
then it'd be another discussion. But I think what has been shown has basically put my back up a little bit more.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
guys.
So, Ed, Thomas, Sasha, Chris,
Yes.
and me. Town meeting, I guess I have to bring some Chinese food.
Bring something healthier.
What would you like? You bring it then.
I'll bring it. We'll
Fine.
talk.
Seaweed or something.
But you gotta make sure that it's something he likes.
Sushi.
Well, I wasn't gonna come here to vote, but I'm not anymore.
Sasha's like, oh, no,
You know what?
It's only a couple of
Sushi before a town meeting? No, I don't think so.
No, I don't.
So, but I absolutely do need you, because that's it. That's what I'm counting on right now. And
At the high school?
it's at the high school.
We have a solid
We,
quorum.
You guys are early?
6:15, get there a little bit earlier so we can chow down on all the beautiful food that Sasha provides us. Lynn, you're more than welcome to join our food parade.
Okay.
Maybe
We'll
you
be drinking,
have
we'll be drinking
Provide better
afterwards.
food.
gonna say, are you sure you don't just want to
Provide
drink?
better food, and I'm coming.
Pardon me? Oh, and the meeting is held in the main conference room by the principal's office. So it's,
How do we get such good digs?
Tell you.
whatever.
I know.
Be there by 6 o'clock,
where's
so you
it?
can dig in. Anyways,
Same.
Sorry.
do we have a motion?
We'll miss you dearly.
Motion to adjourn?
Do I have a second?
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
third.
Thank you very much, everyone.